Welcome back to our discussion on international relations. So yesterday, we started talking about India's relations with Pakistan, and we had almost completed the whole chapter on Pakistan. We are left with few small topics. We'll try to cover that. Then we'll take a look at Afghanistan. I'll help you understand the current situation and as well as the background to the Afghan conflict. These topics are interrelated. Both are very, very important as far as international relations and also internal security is concerned. So first, let's wrap up the few remaining topics under India-Pakistan, and then we'll proceed to talk about India and Afghanistan. We were left with the two last topics here. We covered the background to India-Pakistan relations. We saw all the key events, understood the importance of these events. We spoke about the recent trends in the relationship. So let's talk about a few of the developments that have happened in the last couple of years. See, yesterday, we were just talking about all the problematic areas in the relationship. We were talking about Pakistan's constant sponsorship of terrorism, how Pakistan targets India, tries to internationalize the Kashmir conflict, right? So it's all about the problems that relate to India-Pakistan relations. However, there is one positive aspect of the relationship. There has been one slightly positive development in the recent past, which is the establishment of the Kartarpur corridor. The Kartarpur corridor is a part of the cultural diplomacy between India and Pakistan. It's part of our cultural relations. And recently, we established this corridor called Kartarpur corridor, which marks a significant improvement, at least in our cultural relations. So let's understand what the Kartarpur corridor is all about. Especially for your prelims, this is a very, very important topic. You can expect a question here in prelims based on Kartarpur corridor. What is it? Which places does it connect? Right? So these basic facts are very important and we should analyze this topic as well. So the Kartarpur corridor was a long-standing demand of the Sikh community in Punjab and as well as in other countries. The Sikh community was demanding for a very long time that India and Pakistan should work together. They should work together to establish this land corridor, which could benefit Sikh pilgrims. All right. So this was a long-standing demand of the Sikh community. What they wanted was a direct connection between Gurdaspur, which is a border district in the state of Punjab, and Kartarpur, which is the border location on the other side in Pakistan. Both these places are extremely important in Sikhism. Both are very sacred for Sikh pilgrims. Because in Gurdaspur, you have a sacred Gurudwara, the Dera Baba Nanak, and just few kilometers away, around 6 kilometers away across the border, you have the Kartarpur Gurudwara, which is essentially the Darbar Sahib Gurudwara. It's in the Narowal district in Kartarpur of Pakistan. Both these Gurudwaras are extremely sacred for Sikh pilgrims because it is believed that the founder of Sikhism, Guru Nanak Dev, spent his final years in these two Gurudwaras. So for Sikh pilgrims, the partition that happened in 1947 was a disastrous event, not just because of all the communal violence, but also because the border divided these two sacred Gurudwaras or shrines. The Ratcliffe line, the India-Pakistan boundary, which came up, it ended up dividing the two Gurudwaras and they got placed on either side of the border. Gurdaspur fell under India and Kartarpur came under Pakistan, and hence the two sacred Gurudwaras got separated by a hostile international border. So as a result, the Sikh pilgrims from India could never access Kartarpur. Even though it is just 6 kilometers from the international border here, Sikh pilgrims from India could never visit or access Kartarpur because of the state of relations between India and Pakistan. The only option for them was to apply for a Pakistani visa, wait for a long time, which was very hard to obtain. Considering the state of relations, India and Pakistan don't easily give visas to each other's citizens. We barely have any people-to-people interaction. All right? Even if you manage to get a Pakistani visa, you have to go all the way to, let's say, Islamabad or Karachi and then reach Kartarpur, even though it is just 5-6 kilometers away from the border. And considering that we don't have direct flights, you have to go to, let's say, some West Asian country. From there, you have to reach Karachi or Islamabad and then come to Kartarpur. So it was very, very painful for the Sikh pilgrims as they couldn't pay their respects at Kartarpur. Because of the state of relations, because of the strict immigration laws between the two countries, Sikh pilgrims in India and around the world found it extremely difficult to access Kartarpur. The only option for them was to see the sacred Gurudwara from the Indian side itself via binoculars that were installed along the border. That to see this from a distance, from the Indian side, there were binoculars and telescopes installed along the border, and pilgrims would just see that, they would just see the shrine, never being able to visit the sacred place. So that is why the Sikh community was demanding from a long time, from at least 40-50 years, that a land corridor should be created. A visa-free corridor should be created so that Sikh pilgrims can easily move from Gurdaspur to Kartarpur. Is that clear? This was their demand. And finally, this demand was fulfilled in 2019 when this corridor was inaugurated connecting the two Gurudwaras to mark the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev. 1 year before this, in 2018, the agreement had been signed between India and Pakistan to establish this corridor, to create a port of entry through which Indian pilgrims can enter Pakistan and come back without having to obtain a visa. All right. So in 2018, Prime Minister Modi and then Prime Minister Imran Khan, they both reached out to each other. They worked out this agreement, and this agreement was signed to establish this visa-free land corridor. And in 1 year, they completed the construction as well, right? Because you have to create a lot of facilities. First, you have to build a land corridor here, and then on both sides, there should be terminal facilities. There should be port-like facilities on both the sides to facilitate the movement. So both India and Pakistan took up this joint project. They completed the project on their respective sides, and today Kartarpur corridor has been made functional. It is operational. It was inaugurated right in time for the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev in 2019. Is that clear? So now, Indians, if they wish to visit Kartarpur in Pakistan, all you have to do is visit the website that Ministry of External Affairs has set up. You go here, you apply with all the details, and MEA will transfer the details to the Pakistani immigration authorities. All right? And Pakistani immigration, they will do their own checks. They will see if all the documents are right. Probably they'll run a security background check as well. And finally, they will issue a document. A travel document is issued. It's not a visa. You don't need a visa to visit Pakistan. That is only for Kartarpur. All right? So a travel document will be issued from the Pakistani side, which will allow you to visit Kartarpur Shrine through this land corridor that has been created over the Ravi River. It's been built over the Ravi River. It's around 6 kilometers roughly in length. So from here, from this terminal on the Indian side, pilgrims can travel to the corridor, reach Kartarpur, visit the shrine, and come back on the same day. It's like a one-day travel pass. You can't go outside this corridor. It's a completely locked corridor. You enter from India, you go to Kartarpur, pay your respects, and you come back. So this arrangement has been set up between India and Pakistan. It's a visa-free travel corridor. All right. You can't visit any other part of Pakistan. You can't go out of this corridor, and you don't need a visa as such. It's just a travel document which is given to facilitate easy movement of Indian pilgrims towards Kartarpur and back to India. So this initiative did mark a slight improvement, at least in our cultural and people-to-people relations. The corridor was closed because of the pandemic for almost 2 years, and now recently it has again started operating, and it facilitates the Sikh pilgrims to pay respects at the sacred Darbar Sahib Gurdwara. All right. So you should be aware of the basic facts. Which Gurdwaras does it connect? Right. The corridor has been built on which river, and what exactly is the facility provided to this corridor? If you know these basic facts, it is more than enough to answer a prelims question. In mains, if there's a question on India-Pakistan facility provided to this corridor. If you know these basic facts, it is more than enough to answer a prelims question. In mains, if there's a question on India-Pakistan, right, if it is relevant, you can always add this point, right, as part of our improved cultural relations. Now, coming to the last point here, there was another development in 2019 which had a significant impact on India-Pakistan relations. In the month of August 2019, the Modi government carried out a major change with regard to the constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir. The special status of J&K under Article 370 and Article 35A was revoked by the Modi government. A major change was done. The special status that had been given to Jammu and Kashmir had been revoked. Along with this, Jammu and Kashmir was reorganized into the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union Territory of Ladakh. This was the first time that the Indian state was being broken into two union territories. A state was being downgraded into two union territories. These were very big changes, very controversial changes as well. And the government of India claimed that these changes were necessary to fully integrate Jammu and Kashmir into the Indian Union, to provide for uniform laws across the country which would apply in J&K as well, and to promote development and tackle the security challenges in J&K. This was the justification from the government of India. The government said that these changes are needed. It is necessary. Why? It will provide for full integration of J&K into India. It will allow us to better develop Jammu and Kashmir and ensure better security by effectively tackling terrorism and insurgency, and to ensure uniform application of Indian laws across Jammu and Kashmir as well. Now, let's see why the controversy came up. Let's see what the background is. And let's see what Pakistan spoke about regarding these changes. See, you need to understand why special status had been given to Jammu and Kashmir. If you go back to our yesterday's discussion, we spoke about the difficult circumstances under which J&K merged with India. As I told you yesterday, the then legitimate ruler of J&K had initially opted for independence. So technically, J&K was a separate country for a short period. But after Pakistan launched its attack, after it launched Operation Gulmarg, right, it carried out a tribal-led invasion to capture J&K. It was then that Raja Hari Singh came under pressure and was forced to join India because he had no other option. He would sign the instrument of accession, thus legally merging J&K with India. So the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir technically and correctly belongs to India. Now, when Raja Hari Singh was merging J&K with India, signing the instrument of accession, he had one very clear condition: that since Jammu and Kashmir was joining India under very difficult circumstances, there should be a special status given in the constitution in order to protect the identity and the resources of the people of J&K. This was one of the demands from Jammu and Kashmir. This is not just from J&K. We have seen the same issues and the same demands come up in Northeast India as well. There are many parts of Northeast India, across Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, etc., which have had very unique circumstances as far as they being part of India is concerned. So to provide for a certain degree of protection to some of these areas, to allow the locals to protect their identity, their resources, we do provide special status and special provisions in the constitution. For example, if you look at Article 371, under 371 you have a series of articles, 371A, 371B, etc. The list goes on. So there are a lot of special provisions added under 371 for certain northeastern states. For a few tribal belts of Assam, then Mizoram, Tripura, right? There are a few Naga areas in Meghalaya as well. Special status, special provisions have been given. We have even provided autonomy to certain tribal districts. And in these autonomous areas, the local councils, the autonomous district councils, they actually have a high degree of autonomy. They can even prevent laws of the state and the center from being implemented. Local laws will apply, and the locals can look after their own administration, because it is essential in certain parts to respect the unique culture, the unique identity, and the unique customs of the local people. So keeping that in mind, a certain degree of autonomy and special powers have been given in Northeast India as well. On similar lines, the Indian constitution was made accommodative. It was made flexible with regard to Jammu and Kashmir, because J&K joined India under very difficult circumstances, right? So to protect the identity and the resources of people of J&K, these provisions were added, Article 370 and 35A. Under Article 370, J&K managed to have a separate constitution for itself, a separate mini constitution for Jammu and Kashmir, and the state government and state legislature would enjoy special powers as far as central laws were concerned. Central laws would not automatically apply in J&K, just like it doesn't apply in certain parts of Northeast India. Only if it is approved by the state legislature, only then it will apply in Jammu and Kashmir. Now let's say Parliament enacted a law. Even though the law applies for the whole of India, it wouldn't apply to Jammu and Kashmir and few other parts in India, because wherever the special status was provided, the local administration, the local legislature had to extend those laws, had to approve the application of those laws. So several central laws wouldn't apply in Jammu and Kashmir automatically unless it was extended by the state legislature. Now this was a tremendous power. It was a high degree of autonomy which was given to J&K, plus J&K was allowed to have a separate flag as well, to have a flag of its own. Is that clear? And under Article 35A, special measures were added to the people of J&K, to those who are domiciled in J&K, those who are the locals, the natives of J&K. They would enjoy special protection. For example, only they could buy property. Outsiders will not be allowed to buy property. Even with regard to voting power, voting rights is limited to them. Outsiders will not have voting rights. And any government privileges, like let's say reservation, any government schemes and subsidies, they would primarily benefit the local people, those who are domiciled in J&K. Outsiders wouldn't enjoy any of these benefits. Is that clear? Now this is a restriction. Now if you look at other parts of India, let's say you go from Karnataka to Maharashtra. There's no law which will prevent you from buying land in Maharashtra, right? A citizen from Karnataka, Indian citizen from Karnataka can go to Maharashtra and buy land, can settle down anywhere, can move anywhere. You get voting rights, you can transfer your voting rights as well, and you'll be eligible for all the government privileges, be it reservation or anything else. But however, in J&K, there was a restriction, a limitation. People from outside of J&K, those who are not domiciled here, they will not be allowed to buy property, they will have no voting rights, and they will not be eligible for several government privileges. So this protection was added to Article 35A, which was integral to Article 370. All right. Now, why were these provisions given? It was given to provide a special status so that the people of J&K could protect their identity, their resources, as they had joined India under very difficult circumstances. This was, in fact, a condition, a precondition that Raja Hari Singh had placed before Nehru and Patel when he signed the instrument of accession. Right? He wanted a guarantee that the people of J&K would be protected in the Indian Union. Obviously, a unique state like J&K was merging with a large country like India. So this was a guarantee that was provided, and accordingly, Article 370 was added in the Constitution. But this provision has been controversial. There has been a criticism that it provides for complete special status and autonomy, which affects the integration of J&K into the Indian Union. There has been one section which has always argued that by keeping J&K autonomous and separate, it was affecting the unity and integrity of India. So accordingly, the government has revoked this. So right now, J&K will not enjoy any of these special provisions. As Article 370 has been revoked, the special status has been revoked, the separate flag, the separate constitution, and the autonomous powers, everything has gone away, has been taken away. Right? It's been turned into a union territory, and J&K will have a legislative assembly of its own, like Delhi or Puducherry. Ladakh, on the other hand, is directly under the rule of the center, the administration of the center, like for example, Diu Daman and the others, all right, or like Andaman Nicobar Islands. Similarly, Ladakh has come completely under the rule of the center, and for the time being, J&K is also under the center's direct administration. Until elections are held, until the legislative assembly is set up, J&K will continue to be administered to the central government. These were the landmark changes that were done. So there was a lot of controversy regarding these changes. Again, let's not get into this whether it was the right decision or not. History will be the judge of that, whether it was the right decision to take away the special status or did it have a negative impact. Also, it is too soon to judge. It's just been a few years, it's too soon to judge right now. History will be the judge of it. Let's not get into the political aspect of that. But let's look at Pakistan's reaction. What did Pakistan have to say about this? Pakistan obviously rejected these changes. It protested, it opposed the changes, it criticized India, it even took this matter to international platforms such as UN and OIC. It accused India of making unilateral changes to the Indian side of Jammu and Kashmir. So Pakistan obviously opposed it, as it appeared to change the status quo. Because Pakistan sees itself as a party to the Kashmir conflict, right? But from India's perspective, this is just an internal issue of India. This is our internal matter. Whether we give special status or not, whether we reorganize this region into a state or a union territory, this is completely the discretion of the Indian state. This is an internal matter, an internal issue of India. No country, no foreign organization has any right to interfere here, according to India, right? So, but Pakistan does not think so. Pakistan thinks it's a disputed area where Pakistan is a party to the dispute. And according to Pakistan, India has changed the status quo unilaterally, which is a violation of the agreements and the basic human rights of the people of J&K. So Pakistan protested the changes. It brought the matter up at UN and OIC to criticize India. China also supported Pakistan in this regard, because obviously China was focusing on Ladakh. For China, the concern was Ladakh. Now Ladakh was coming directly under the rule of the center. So this again is a change of status quo, because a part of Ladakh is under Chinese occupation. That is Aksai Chin. China has captured Aksai Chin from Ladakh region. So if Ladakh were to come directly under the center, right, previously it was under Jammu and Kashmir government, which had a special autonomy. Now that autonomy was gone and Ladakh was coming directly under the center's rule, China also protested and it brought up the matter at UN, supported Pakistan and criticized India for making unilateral changes. So India's response was very simple. We informed Pakistan and China that this is none of your business. This is our internal issue. This is our internal matter. India has every sovereign right to do as it pleases. Right? In that regard, India is absolutely correct. See, whether the decision is right or wrong, that's a different question altogether. As I told you, history will be the judge of that. But as far as a foreign country or an international organization interfering, they have no locus standi. They have no rational, they have no justification to interfere in this issue, because this is purely an internal matter of India. Is that clear? So India has maintained their position, and in the last few years, the government has been trying to open up opportunities for investments in J&K. Now that outsiders can also procure property here, right? They can settle, they can take up work, get voting rights. The necessary changes have been made, and the government is looking to boost private investments. Along with this, some of the terror groups, they have started countering these changes as well. And they're mainly targeting outside workers, migrant workers. In the last 3 years, we have noticed that targeted attacks have increased in J&K. There have been few attacks again against Kashmiri Pandits, and there have been few attacks against migrant workers, especially from UP and Bihar. There are a lot of migrant workers in Jammu and Kashmir from UP and Bihar, and they have been targeted by terror outfits. So this is what concerns India, right? The terror groups are specifically targeting certain groups of people. And this is something we can't afford. We can't afford a repeat of what has happened before. That is why maintaining constant surveillance, vigilance here is extremely important. Pakistan will not stop at anything. It will go to any extent to create new problems for India, and hence it's extremely crucial for India to remain vigilant, to counter infiltration, to counter the terrorism in the region. All right? So this is where things stand as of today. So now, let me bring you to the last point of my discussion under India-Pakistan. I want to talk about the Sir Creek dispute. We have studied the Kashmir dispute. We spoke about the Siachen dispute as well. So let's take up the last remaining dispute, that is the Sir Creek dispute between the two countries. I showed you in the map yesterday that in the Gujarat sector of the international border, there is this small water body called the Sir Creek. Over here, we have a minor dispute, an unsettled dispute. Let me show you where exactly it is located. This is the Kutch region of Gujarat, the Run of Kutch. As you can see, it's a marshy area, it's a wetland. The Run of Kutch is known for its marshy ecosystem here. This is the international border, the settled border between India and Pakistan, that's coming from Punjab, Rajasthan down to Gujarat. At the last stretch, where the IB meets the Arabian Sea, where we actually share a maritime border. Over here, we share a maritime border as well. So right before this, between the international border and the maritime border, there is this water body, this estuary called the Sir Creek. This is part of the Indus drainage basin itself. All the Indus rivers, they merge, they drain into the Arabian Sea. So as part of the Indus drainage system, there are a few estuaries, backwaters present between Sindh province of Pakistan and Gujarat of India. Is that clear? So there's one water body, one estuary here called the Sir Creek estuary. And somewhere around this, the international border is supposed to pass through. But both India and Pakistan have different claims as to where exactly the border should pass through the Sir Creek region. And this is the source of the dispute. Pakistan claims that the whole Sir Creek belongs to itself. In this map, if you observe, you can see the green dotted line here that marks the eastern boundary of Sir Creek. According to Pakistan, this is where the international border should pass through, which means Sir Creek will entirely belong to Pakistan. Pakistan is claiming the whole Sir Creek to itself. It wants the border to be drawn here at the edge of Sir Creek, the eastern edge, so that the whole estuary belongs to Pakistan. India does not agree with this. India believes that the border should pass in between, in the middle of Sir Creek, over here, this orange dotted line. According to India, this should be the international border. This is India's claim. So that Sir Creek is divided between India and Pakistan. India is not claiming the whole Sir Creek to itself like Pakistan. We are just claiming half of it, right? Now, this claim of India is actually based on a sound international principle. It's based on an international doctrine called the Thalweg principle or the Thalweg doctrine. This has been recognized under international law, under the UN clause or the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The UN clause is a UN global convention that helps in defining maritime boundaries. It helps in defining maritime boundaries and the rights of countries in these boundaries. All right. Under UN clause, there is this principle or doctrine called Thalweg principle, which has been recognized, which provides for drawing of boundaries if a water body marks the border between two countries. If a water body is marking a border, then UN clause has a provision. There's an international law on where the border should pass through. Now let's assume this is a water body, this is the channel. Okay, just assume, take a hypothetical example. Let's say this is country A, this is country B. And there's supposed to be a border here passing through. Okay, this land border hits the water body here. Now what will happen in this water body? How will it be divided? According to Thalweg principle, according to the Thalweg doctrine of UN clause, such a border should pass in the middle of the navigation channel. It should pass in the middle of the navigation channel. Is that clear? Irrespective of what the other country is claiming, irrespective of what these countries are claiming, according to this established international law, the border will pass through the middle of the navigation channel so that both the sides will get a fair share of this water body. It is a fair and equal division that is provided under UN clause. Is that clear? If there is a backwater or an estuary or a lagoon or a river that's marking the boundary, right, near the maritime areas, near coastal areas, then Thalweg principle will apply Thalweg doctrine, which is part of international law, and according to it, the boundary will pass through the middle of the navigation channel. So both countries will get an equal share. Now, this is exactly what India is asking for. India is asking for the Thalweg doctrine to be implemented. We are just asking what is recognized under international law. We are not greedy here. We're not asking for anything extra. But Pakistan is not respecting the Thalweg principle and it is claiming the whole Sir Creek to itself. Based on certain geographical and historical claims, Pakistan is claiming entire Sir Creek to itself, which is not acceptable to India. Because this could even determine the maritime borders. It could lead to some changes in the maritime borders, potential changes in the exclusive economic zone of both the countries in the Arabian Sea. So there are implications, and that is why the dispute remains. We have tried negotiating this. It's actually a minor dispute with a bigger heart. Both the sides can resolve this. But we have not been able to find a solution due to the state of relations between India and Pakistan. During the government of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, according to reports, India had come very close to striking a deal over Sir Creek dispute. But it was disrupted by the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. Before the Mumbai attacks, it was reported that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and President Musharraf, they had engaged in a secret negotiation through back-channel diplomacy, and they had almost finalized an agreement. Most likely it was on Sir Creek dispute. Right? It was a classified covert negotiation. We'll never know the details in the public, but it's widely reported that it was most likely over the Sir Creek issue, and possibly something related to Siachen as well. But beyond the point, because of the Mumbai attacks, which completely disrupted India-Pakistan relations. So this issue remains, and in this stretch, the international border is not determined. This is where we have this small dispute. All right. So this is what you should know about the Siachen and Sir Creek disputes. So this completes my discussion, the elaborate discussion on India and Pakistan. We've covered all the required points, all the important points have been covered in detail. Now, what about the conclusion? What about the way forward? Since it's a very controversial chapter, what if difficult questions come up in mains? How do you answer this? What if there are questions on the Kashmir conflict or terrorism that emanates from Pakistan, right? So how do you handle this? So for this, I've added few points in the last two slides here, in this slide and in the next slide. This should be your way forward. It should be a part of your conclusion. It's just a suggestion from my end. You can include any other points from your end as well. So when you're talking about India relations, of course, you'll talk about terrorism. You should call for an end to terrorism. You can clearly point out Pakistan is a state sponsor of terrorism. You can do this. There's nothing wrong with this. You can clearly point out in your answer that Pakistan is a state sponsor of terrorism against India. You can name the terror groups as well. You can mention that groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and the others, they have been sheltered in Pakistan. You can mention the support Pakistan has given in the form of terror sanctuaries, funds, weapons, etc. But always ensure that you don't show any unnecessary hate towards Pakistan, towards any country in general, right? Because that is not a mature approach. You have to keep your emotions away, keep your biases away. Whatever political biases you have, keep them aside. Approach this topic as just any other bilateral relationship, right? Pakistan is just like any other country. You need not hold any grudge, any hatred against the country. You should never show it, and you should never have that as well in the first place. You have to show that you are a very mature individual having a mature opinion about this sensitive topic. You can talk about the Kashmir conflict if the question is asking for it, right? And if the question is asking about how India will tackle the concerns, how India should deal with Pakistan, what should we do about Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, there you can talk about all the options. You can mention that first we should strengthen our own security, we should improve our intelligence gathering, improve border security, we have to better defend our country, defend the borders, prevent infiltration, right? You can mention all those points. You can also mention that we should have effective counter-terrorist, counter-insurgency operations. You can even mention that we should step up our covert operations to disable the terror attacks. To target the terror groups, covert operations are absolutely essential. Covert intelligence-based operations. These are absolutely necessary. So from a security point of view, you can mention all these points. At the same time, you have to mention the diplomatic engagement with Pakistan. We should engage with Pakistan at any cost. We can't simply cut off the relations. Right? We can't afford that situation where India and Pakistan have no contact with each other. We are neighbors who have a major dispute. We have nuclear weapons with each other. Right? There are a lot of security concerns. So there's no way you can't be talking to such an important country. Whether you like it or not, whether you like the country or not, you have to engage with the country. So engagement is something that should remain constant. All right? At least some level of engagement. If not very close friendly relations, right? At least some degree of engagement, some contacts are always essential to prevent any mistakes, to prevent any miscalculations, which might result in a bigger conflict. Right? So contact and engagement is something that should be maintained. But as far as dealing with this country is concerned, dealing with the problems Pakistan creates for India, we should adopt a carrot and stick method. And that's what India has been doing since many, many years. We should look out for friendly opportunities. We should never give up that hope. Because as I told you, in international relations, there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. Right? Today, Pakistan might be hostile. Maybe 50 years down the line, you never know. We might become very good neighbors. Right? That opportunity always exists. So any opportunity that comes up, we should grab it. We should look out for friendly opportunities. Be it sports, be it cultural relationship, border trade, for example, the Kartarpur corridor. We should grab any opportunity to build close relations and to reward Pakistan as well. At the same time, we should have mechanisms to punish Pakistan and impose a cost on Pakistan if it does not change its behavior. There should be a cost. This can be done through coercive diplomacy. You should engage in coercive diplomacy, which India has been doing since last 20, 30 years at least, to bring that international pressure. Is that we are targeting Pakistan at UN, at FATF, bringing that additional pressure, working with other like-minded countries such as US, Russia, France, right? All these countries could help India, even Israel. There are many global partners who have similar concerns about Pakistan and its behavior. We can work with these bilateral partners, work with international platforms to put that diplomatic pressure, impose an economic cost on Pakistan, right? Some kind of sanctions, either to UN, to FATF, or to a group of countries is something we should look for, because this could help punish Pakistan for its sponsorship of terrorism. All right, this is an option that India should develop. And along with this, finally, the last option, we should always maintain, develop, and keep ready military and as well as covert options to punish Pakistan. We have done this in the past. We have imposed a military cost by targeting Pakistan. We have run many covert operations in the past as well to exploit Pakistan's internal divides. Those options should be available at least. If not putting it to use, we should at least have the options available. I'll just give you one example. I think I mentioned this as well. When Khalistan movement was at its peak in 1980s, when ISI was backing the Khalistan terror groups, India retaliated against Pakistan. India's RAW, Research and Analysis Wing, mounted a counter operation in Pakistan under the Rajiv Gandhi government, and India retaliated in Pakistan. For every attack in India, there would be counter attacks in Pakistan. RAW would target the links between ISI and the Khalistan groups. Pakistani cities were targeted, right? So these were a series of covert operations that took place in 1980s, late 1980s. This played a role in pushing Pakistan back. It imposed a heavy cost on Pakistan, and finally, Pakistan backed out from supporting the Khalistan groups. So it played an important role in bringing down the Khalistan movement, right? So the military and covert options should always be present. Recently, for example, the Modi government has used and displayed the strength as well to surgical strikes, air strikes. Those precision targeted strikes, they should always be available, along with mechanisms to prevent any escalation and any possible nuclear threat. This is something we should avoid at any cost. All right, even if you exercise the military option, we should always focus that we shouldn't allow this to escalate into a bigger war. Right? It shouldn't turn into a possible conflict with a nuclear consequence. This is something that should never happen, which is never good in the interest of any country. However, under the nuclear threshold, within the nuclear threshold, we should develop, test, and keep options ready in the military and covert domain as well. You have to impose a cost on such a country which has been behaving like a rogue country. At the same time, we should keep options open for rebuilding friendly relations if the opportunity comes up. There should be options to impose an economic cost and diplomatic pressure as well. So you need a combination of this. It's not just one approach. Is that clear? So there will be, some people who are emotionally driven, who have a mindless hatred towards Pakistan. They'll simply say we should target Pakistan, we should launch a war, destroy Pakistan. Those are immature, stupid responses. All right. A mature individual who understands the depth of India-Pakistan relations will think about all the multiple options. Right? You have to look out for friendly relations. Any cultural opportunity, any trade opportunity, you have to grab it. Any opportunity to resolve our disputes, especially Sir Creek and Siachen, you have to grab it immediately. At the same time, you should work with international organizations and foreign countries to bring the diplomatic pressure and consider maybe economic sanctions on Pakistan. And keep the military options and the covert intelligence options as well, because you need the hard power as well to punish Pakistan, to impose a cost on Pakistan. All right. So this is something that you can talk about in your answers. You can mention this. You can mention this in step by step and say that, okay, this is the approach India should be taking towards Pakistan. All right. The red lines have to be drawn. We should clearly point out the red line of India. We cannot take terrorism anymore. Terrorism will not be tolerated. We can't be talking to Pakistan and terrorism being sponsored on the other hand. That will not work. Right? For Pakistan, it's always about Kashmir. It's obsession. But India should make it clear that unless and until terrorism is not used as a weapon, India will not be talking to Pakistan on the Kashmir issue. So these are some firm stands India has to take. India has always taken this. We have to continue on this path. And as I told you, there is no immediate solution to this. As I see, for the next 15, 20 years at least, there is no solution. Things will continue as it is. Status quo will remain. It's a very complex dispute. It's not going to resolve so quickly. So something dramatic has to happen. Something big has to happen, and there should be some big change, either in India or Pakistan, which might bring up changes. But it's all speculation. So as of now, given the state of the relations today, the current situation is likely to remain for the short to medium term. But in the long run, there could be opportunities when we could resolve this issue through talks and negotiations. The mediated settlement is the only option, right? So let's see where it goes. We can't predict what will happen, but at least the hunch is that the status quo will prevail in the coming years. All right. On this note, I would like to end my discussion on India and Pakistan. We have completely covered all the required topics. So now let me take your questions, your doubts, and then I'll move on to the next topic, which is Afghanistan. We'll have a short discussion on Afghanistan as well, a brief discussion on Afghan war and the current status. Let's discuss that for the next 20 odd minutes. But before that, let's see what questions, what doubts have come up. Pooja is asking, what is status quo at Sir Creek? At Sir Creek, currently, part of it is controlled by Pakistan, part of it is controlled by India. That is the current status quo. Ashraf is asking, what is Kori Creek and Kanjar Creek? These are other creeks and estuaries present in the Kutch region, in the Kutch Marshy wetland area. Anubhav is asking why Pakistan was included in grey list. What steps were taken by Pakistan to come out of it? See, Anubhav here is referring to Financial Action Task Force and how Pakistan had been grey listed by the FATF. We actually studied this topic in detail under internal security. Under the terrorism chapter and under money laundering, there is a separate discussion on FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. So there I'll be explaining this in detail. Now let me just give you a brief idea. FATF is an intergovernmental body, a global body to fight or to counter money laundering and terrorist financing. The primary purpose of FATF is to counter money laundering and terror financing. So if countries are not following FATF standards, FATF gives recommendations on how to counter money laundering and terror financing. If a country is not following those standards, if it is deliberately violating these global standards, if it is enabling money laundering and terror financing, those countries can be punished by FATF by first grey listing them and then by blacklisting them. So Pakistan has been grey listed 3 times. Grey listing is like a notice, it's like a final warning. Once a country is grey listed, it is given an action plan to improve. FATF will give an action plan with specified targets, which should be achieved by this country within a given deadline. It has to show progress in countering money laundering and terror financing, implement the specific actions pointed out by FATF in the action plan. If this progress is shown, then the country might be removed from the grey list. It will escape any punishment, any action. It will be removed from the grey list. But even after this, if the country is not cooperating, if it is still not implementing the standards, if it is ignoring the action plan, then FATF can elevate and place this country on the blacklist, which is going to invite global economic sanctions on the country. For example, Iran, North Korea, Myanmar. These 3 countries which have not cooperated with FATF, they have been blacklisted by FATF. So Iran, North Korea, and Myanmar are under crippling economic sanctions today. They have been cut off from the global economy. Pakistan was on the grey list. India played a key role in getting Pakistan placed on the grey list. Right? It's happened 3 times. And recently in 2018, it was back on the grey list. Why? Because it was not tackling money laundering and terror financing. So India, US, France, and many other countries, they used FATF to push Pakistan onto the grey list. So FATF had given an action plan. It had prescribed 36 targets for Pakistan, and Pakistan showed the progress in the last 4 years. For the last 4 to 5 years, it has shown progress in achieving the targets. Almost 33 targets were achieved by Pakistan. That is why FATF removed Pakistan from the grey list. Is that clear? It has escaped the penalty of blacklisting. It has been removed from the grey list as well because it showed the progress in the last 4 years to achieve some of the targets as prescribed by FATF. Aditya is asking post-UFA initiative and Hurriyat issue. What is it, sir? Yes, I think you saw the slide here. This is one point I had suggested here. So what is post-UFA initiative? What is Hurriyat? Let me mention this as well. See, in UFA, which is in Russia, when the BRICS and SCO summit took place in 2014-2015, India, Pakistan had a meeting. Remember, I had mentioned this yesterday. Just go back. See over here. After Nawaz Sharif attended the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister Modi, after India launched Neighbor First policy and India, Pakistan were getting close to each other, Modi and Nawaz Sharif, they met each other again at the SCO BRICS summit, which was held at UFA in Russia. Russia was hosting the SCO BRICS summit. So here there was an opportunity for India, Pakistan to meet. They discussed many issues, including terrorism, and issued a historic joint statement. It had been many, many years since India, Pakistan had issued a joint statement. In this joint statement, both India and Pakistan recognized the problem of terrorism. They spoke about efforts to be made, joint efforts to counter terrorism. Now, this was a big commitment. Right? Pakistan had agreed to this. It had at least agreed publicly in the joint statement to work with India to counter terrorism, and it was recognizing the problem of terrorism in the region. This was seen as a big development, a big positive development. But it was disrupted because of the terror attack that started again. From 2015, a series of attacks began against military installations, which disrupted the friendly ties between Modi and Nawaz Sharif. So since then, our relations have been badly affected. So the suggestion here is we should resume from here. If opportunities come up, we should look at the post-UFA initiative. We should go back to that kind of environment where we were talking to each other on every issue. Right? India was also showing the willingness to discuss Kashmir if Pakistan talks about terrorism. That is the arrangement we should get to. That is the stage we should get to in the future, where we can freely talk about all the issues. For us, biggest problem is terrorism, Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism. If Pakistan addresses this with India, we will talk about Kashmir, we'll talk about Siachen, Sir Creek, we'll discuss every issue and we'll try to resolve it as well. So we need to get into that frame of mind where we focus on the post-UFA initiatives and work out such agreements and joint statements and take the relationship forward. So that is the suggestion which has been provided here. Next, what is the Hurriyat? The Hurriyat is basically a coalition of all the separatist forces in Jammu and Kashmir. In J&K, there are many separatist groups. All right, there are few political separatist outfits who are politically demanding separatism from India. They want independence from India. There have been some militant organizations as well. For example, you would have heard of JKLF, the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. It's a violent separatist outfit classified by India as a terrorist organization. These are local outfits based out of India, based out of Jammu and Kashmir. See, Lashkar, Jaish are different. They are backed by Pakistan, mainly based out of Pakistan. All right, but there are separatist groups in Jammu and Kashmir itself, and they do have some genuine concerns. There's a reason why separatism started in J&K. Until 1987, J&K was largely peaceful. The people of J&K were in favor of India. Largely, they were in favor of India. They never sought independence or to join Pakistan. These sentiments came up because of the resentment for the people of J&K. They saw that Jammu and Kashmir was not developing. They saw that J&K had become a military state, where the security forces had complete control, leading to violation of basic rights, fundamental rights as well. For many, many years, the right to movement, right to free expression has been curbed in Jammu and Kashmir. Right? The right to free press, mobile and internet, they're often suspended in J&K. So this kind of military state, right, has affected the progress, the development, the rights, the well-being of the people of J&K. So in 1980s, they were expecting development, they were expecting progress, and when things didn't go as planned, right? It gave out all the frustration. The frustration came out. It burst out in the form of a separatist movement. This is similar to any other separatist movement we've seen in Northeast India. So the previous government of India, be it under Narasimha Rao or let's say Vajpayee, Prime Minister Vajpayee, and even under Manmohan Singh, they were all open to talking to separatist groups. They had formed a coalition called the Hurriyat or the Hurriyat Conference. There are some separatist groups which only have a political demand. They are politically demanding separatism. But there are some violent groups as well which have engaged in acts of terrorism like JKLF. So you have both kinds of separatist groups. But in the past, we have engaged with the separatist forces because these are your own citizens at the end of the day. For example, we talked to Naga insurgents. We talked to Bodo insurgents. We struck a peace deal with them. Just 2-3 years back, the Modi government struck a peace deal with the Bodo outfits. Right? Previously, we struck peace agreements with Mizo insurgents in Tripura. Right? So we always talk to insurgents. We are ready to talk to Naxals as well if they are ready for negotiation. That is one way of resolving a conflict. That is one way of resolving a local conflict led by your own people. Because you can't win these conflicts all the time by using force. You just weaken the groups, you weaken the extremist groups, especially the violent groups, bring them to the negotiating table, make some concessions, give some concessions, because usually there will be a genuine issue at the grassroots. In Northeast India, lack of development, the lack of protection of the rights of the tribal communities is a genuine root cause which has contributed to insurgency. So government shows the willingness to talk to these insurgents and makes concessions as well. It also maintains contacts with insurgent groups so that we can keep the violence at a minimum. We can keep a check on the violence in the region. So previously, from 1980s till let's say 2014, the policy of the government was that we will talk to Hurriyat. We even allowed Hurriyat to meet with Pakistan. The Hurriyat leaders, who are the separatist leaders of JNK, some were political leaders, some were former militants. We would allow them to meet Pakistani leadership. We would allow them to meet the Pakistani officials in the embassy, in the High Commission. Even the Indian government would work with them, our top leaders or intelligence agencies. They would contact and maintain ties with the Hurriyat. But the Modi government has reversed this policy. The Modi government has cut off all ties with Hurriyat because the Modi government believes that we shouldn't talk to separatists. Is that clear? So in the last 7 years, India has cut off ties with the Hurriyat. We don't recognize the Hurriyat as a stakeholder. All right? But the criticism here is that if you don't talk to separatists in JNK, then why are you talking to separatists in Northeast India? Why did you sign the Bodo Accord, the third Bodo Accord? Why are you negotiating with Naga insurgents and the Kamtapur insurgents? Right? So that is a valid criticism. In any conflict, you cannot ignore the separatist group. Right? If they're ready to surrender, if they're ready to change their path, if they're ready to give up violence, right? They should be considered as a stakeholder because whether you like it or not, even the separatists are a stakeholder in the conflict. Your own citizens. I'm not talking about foreign terrorists. I'm not talking about Pakistani terrorists or groups supported by Pakistan. We are talking about local groups, separatist groups based out of that region. Be it a political separatist group or a violent extremist group. It's the duty of the government to engage with them. First, of course, you weaken them, you target them, break their activities, keep their violence under check, target them with your security operations. There's no wrong in that. But if they're ready to surrender, change the path, they should be treated as a stakeholder. We've done that in Northeast India. That is a successful model of conflict resolution. If you don't treat the separatist forces as a stakeholder, then how will you ever resolve this conflict? India alone single-handedly can't resolve this. You cannot resolve this unless and until you engage with all the stakeholders, which includes Pakistan, which includes the separatist forces and the people of JNK. Right? This was the approach of all previous governments, but now the Modi government has taken a different approach. Again, it's not for us to judge whether it's right or wrong. It's a political call, but let's see what happens. Right? You need not judge. Such questions will not come asking whether it's the right policy or not. But just know that the Modi government is not talking to Hurriyat leaders. We have cut off the Hurriyat and we don't see them as a stakeholder right now. But previously, we had recognized them as a stakeholder because whether you like it or not, separatist forces do have a stake in the conflict. Right? So that is what you need to understand. Subhanshu is asking, please discuss the BrahMos missile incident. Can a question be asked on this topic? Yes, definitely yes. It's from current affairs of last year. Last year, there was accidental misfiring of the BrahMos cruise missile. It was a pure mistake, an operational error from the Indian Air Force, and this missile landed in Pakistan accidentally. Luckily for both of us, it wasn't armed. It was just a dead dummy missile without a warhead. It hadn't been mated with a warhead. And if it was, God knows what would have happened. Because clearly it was an act of war. It could have been seen by Pakistan as an act of war. Because the Indian missile breached Pakistani airspace, landed in a civilian territory. Right? Apart from some minor damage, there was no other loss. If it had a warhead, there would be very large consequences in Pakistan. Pakistan would treat it as an act of war and possibly retaliate against India. Because this happened at a time when India and Pakistan were having a very tense relationship. Just a couple of years ago, we had launched airstrikes, right? Plus, we had high tensions between the two because of all these issues. So Pakistan obviously would have assumed this to be an attack from India, and it would have retaliated as well. So there has been a court of inquiry. The accountability has been established. The responsible officers have been suspended as well, and they have approached the court. Recently, I think in the last couple of days, this case is in news. The suspended officers of the Indian Air Force have filed a petition to the High Court, the Delhi High Court, saying that this is unfair. It was not just them who was responsible; there were others who were involved. So fixing this accountability is very important. Now, this is where you should understand how sensitive these platforms can be. Be it your missiles, your nuclear arsenal, right? They're extremely sensitive. It's very important to safeguard them because there could be such accidents which can happen. There could be miscalculations which might happen. So we should have mechanisms to prevent this from escalating. Now imagine if this missile that landed in Pakistan had a warhead, right? But it was an accident. India didn't launch the missile deliberately to target Pakistan, but accidentally it got launched. It targeted and hit a city as well. Many people were killed as well. So that is when you need to have contacts. That is when we should have a channel where we can communicate to Pakistan and tell Pakistan that, okay, this was a mistake. It was just an accident. We didn't deliberately target. So let's cool down. Let's keep the tensions down. Let's not take it up. Let's not treat this as an act of war. So that kind of contact, communication is essential. That channel should always be available. That's why I told you can't break off ties with a country like Pakistan. See, many people, especially in the media, in the opposition, they mindlessly argue that we shouldn't talk to Pakistan. We should cut off ties with Pakistan. Right? This is pure rhetoric. They don't understand the depth of diplomacy. Whether you like it or not, with crucial neighbors like Pakistan, you need to have contacts at any point of time. What if tomorrow there is some other accident leading to a possible nuclear escalation? When you don't have any communication, that is when you misunderstand each other. Right? What if the government or the leadership never ordered the attack? Right? What if there are rogue elements who have done it? So there is a need for cooperation and communication at all points of time. That is the lesson we take away from this incident. We should have channels, right? We should have channels where we can communicate to the other side. The mistake could happen from Pakistan as well. Tomorrow there might be rogue elements in Pakistan who might take matters into their own hands and launch a strike on India. Pakistan should have a channel with India to tell India that the government didn't order the attack. It was few rogue elements or it was accidental firing, right? So that the issue does not escalate. So that is the lesson we take away from this because this would have easily gone out of control. Zeba is asking, how can Pakistan violate treaties and agreements so easily? Isn't there any punishment for that? Why big powers don't take actions? See, that is how international relations work. When countries breach any international obligations, quite often there are no consequences immediately. The only immediate consequences, they'll be criticized. That's it. But of course, international organizations are not very effective. When it comes to small countries, yes, there will be some punishment. But big powers, they always escape their misbehavior. Like China, US, if they violate rules and treaties, they don't face any consequences. Ajay is asking, refer to faculty, why India trusts Pakistan whenever India approaches Pakistan as a friendly neighborhood. Instead of good relationship, they're hostile to India with terror groups. Please comment on this. That's what we have been discussing through the chapter, right? Yes, Pakistan has always been hostile. Even when we reach out in a friendly manner, Pakistan reacts in a hostile manner. It's used terror groups against India. So that is something we covered throughout the chapter, right? I also discussed how to deal with this, what challenges come from it. There are areas where we can't do anything as of now. We have to deal with the fact that Pakistan will continue on this path. That is something we should accept as well, right? Sometimes there are no solutions. You have to accept that. Pakistan might remain like this for maybe 50 years. You don't know. Pakistan might become even more dangerous for India. It might even sponsor more terrorism against India, right? So you have to develop your own contingency plans, put in measures to protect yourself, because you should be prepared for any eventuality. Okay, so guys, these are the questions. Now let's move on to the next part of my discussion. I want to talk about India and Afghanistan, give you a brief idea about the Afghan war. All right, it will be a short discussion, but nevertheless, it's very, very important. See, Afghanistan, India, and okay, so guys, these are the questions. Now let's move on to the next part of my discussion. I want to talk about India and Afghanistan, give you a brief idea about the Afghan war. All right, it will be a short discussion, but nevertheless, it's very, very important. See, Afghanistan has gone through a brutal history of conflict. All right, it's called the graveyard of empires today. It's referred to as the graveyard of empires because many big powers have come here, they've tried controlling and occupying Afghanistan, but they've all been defeated. All right, first it was Britain in 1800s. The British Empire tried to capture and control Afghanistan. All right, the Anglo-Afghan wars took place. You read about it in history. Britain did control Afghanistan for a short period, but they couldn't keep their hold on Afghanistan because see, the Afghan people, especially the Pashtun community, they are very, very resilient. They resist any outside interference. All right, in Afghanistan, this is where you understand the basics of Afghan's geography. See, in Afghanistan, in the north, you have several tribes, and you have the Hindu Kush mountain ranges, right, that meets with Central Asia. All right, if you look at the map, it becomes very clear that towards the north, you have the mountainous regions, even towards the eastern border with Pakistan as well, you do have some mountainous areas. These Hindu Kush mountains, they reach out into Central Asia. So here in the north, you have few tribes which are Central Asian tribes essentially. You have tribes such as the Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turks, Kazakhs, and many other tribal groups. So the northern parts of Afghanistan is more diverse. You have a lot of ethnic groups present in the north. When you come to the south and even parts of the west and the east, here you mainly have plain areas, and the region is dominated by the Pashtun community. The Pashtuns are the dominant ethnic group of Afghanistan. They are found in neighboring Pakistan as well, across the border, across the Durand line, in Balochistan and in parts of the tribal belts of Pakistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So there you find the Pashtun community as well. So Pashtuns are found on both sides, but they're dominant here in Afghanistan, in southern Afghanistan especially. Historically, there is a lot of rivalry between these groups, between Pashtuns and the other tribes. And Pashtuns have been the dominant group and the class here. They have controlled Afghanistan for centuries. They have resisted any outside interference, including the British. Eventually, the Pashtuns pushed back the British. They kept attacking the British forces, pushed them out, and eventually Britain retreated. Britain accepted defeat. The then empire, it was the most important global power at that point. Britain retreated from Afghanistan and negotiated the Durand Line, drawing boundaries between British India and Afghanistan. So Britain was defeated. The superior power at that point was defeated. Then came the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and now the United States. These are the three powers, three global powers, three empires which have been defeated in Afghanistan. That's why Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires. Essentially, big powers and empires have come here to die. They've been taken to the graveyard. That's what it means. The Pashtuns have been so resilient, they've fought against any outside invasion or interference. They pushed back the outside forces no matter how strong they were. They defeated Britain in 1800s. The same would happen in 1980s with the Soviet forces. In the year 1979, Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Just like Russia has invaded Ukraine, quite similarly, on similar grounds. Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to protect its interests during the Cold War. Please don't forget, this was a Cold War period where there was intense rivalry between US and the Soviet Union. They would go to any extent to protect their interests. They were fighting a covert geopolitical war in almost every country. And back then, Afghanistan was a neighbor of Soviet Union. Soviet Union was a very large country that included Central Asia as well. All your Central Asian countries today, they're all part of Soviet Union. Be it Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. These three Central Asian countries have borders today with Afghanistan. They were all part of Soviet Union. They were all Soviet republics. So Soviet Union had borders with Afghanistan. So Soviet Union was always interested in maintaining its influence in Afghanistan. This was the backyard of Soviet Union, right? It couldn't tolerate any American influence in Afghanistan. In 1979, even though Soviet Union was the most dominant influential power, the American influence was starting to rise. The US was trying to push democracy. It was trying to promote Western influence in the country, and the Afghan government, the then Afghan government, was inclining towards the Western countries. So Soviet Union saw this as a threat when Afghanistan was coming under American influence. Quite similar to how Russia has opposed Ukraine's tilt towards Western countries. So based on these concerns and fears, Soviet Union decided to counter the American influence, and it attacked the country. It invaded Afghanistan and captured the country as well. All right, Soviet forces were in occupation of Afghanistan. Now, obviously, the Pashtuns wouldn't take this lying down. As I told you, Pashtuns don't like any kind of outside interference. They have their own culture, their own resources and opportunities to protect. In the Pashtun community, there are many warlords who control the drug trade in Afghanistan. Drug production has been a major trade in this region, in the southern pockets of Afghanistan especially. These Pashtun warlords, they function like criminal cartels. They grow opium. Afghanistan is the world's biggest producer of opium. All right, today it's producing all kinds of drugs, not just opium and related drugs, but even chemical synthetic drugs. This billion-dollar industry is controlled by the Pashtun warlords. So they wouldn't take any outside influence to destroy their identity, their wealth, and they would always resist this. So as Soviet Union occupied Afghanistan, the United States, Western countries, Saudi Arabia, they all saw this as an opportunity to get back at the Soviet Union, to counter the Soviet Union. All these countries were on one side, right? The Western countries, obviously, they were all on one block, right? All the NATO countries. Saudi Arabia as well, because ideologically it was opposed to Soviet Union. Also, Saudi Arabia was getting closer to the Western countries by 1970s. They all saw this as an opportunity to target Soviet Union, and they decided to create a resistance force. They decided to support a resistance force in Afghanistan, which could resist and target the Soviet occupation. And here they found a suitable ally to do the job, which was Pakistan. These countries, they would work with Pakistan, give Pakistan the funds, the weapons, and the support so that it could radicalize the Pashtun community and raise an insurgent force called Afghan Mujahideen. Basically, they misused religion. They twisted religion in the region, gave it a wrong interpretation, used it for geopolitical reasons to push against the Soviet forces and defeat Soviet Union in Afghanistan. This is the American covert war in Afghanistan that was fought with the help of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. Is that clear? This is something we witnessed in Afghanistan in 1970s, 1980s. All right, so this is where I would like to take a short break. Let's take a 15 minutes break. I've laid the foundation for this. We'll come back after 15 minutes and we'll resume the discussion from here. All right, so let's come back at around 7:35. All right, just remember that in 1979, Soviet Union had invaded the country and Western countries were working with Pakistan to counter the Soviet Union by launching a covert war. Pakistan would help these countries to radicalize the Pashtuns and turn them into Mujahideen fighters, promote religious fundamentalism, and Pakistan was having access to all funds, weapons coming from Western countries and Saudi Arabia. All right, this was the covert war against the Soviet Union. So just remember this point. We'll come back after the break and resume the discussion. Sunni world. It wants to retain its dominance within the Sunni world at any cost. It has been of the Muslim world, of the Sunni world. Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. So before the break, we were talking about the situation in Afghanistan in 1979. I explained how Afghanistan is considered as a graveyard of empires, how major powers have tried occupying and controlling the country, but they've all been defeated and they've been forced to retreat from Afghanistan. In 1979, Soviet Union invaded the country. It toppled the government and captured the country as well in order to retain its influence. In order to protect its influence in the region, they tried countering the Western American influence and invaded and occupied the country. So when Soviet invasion happened and when Soviet forces were occupying the country, this was seen as an opportunity by the Western countries to target the Soviet forces and weaken the Soviet Union itself. So Western countries led by US, they waged a covert war. They launched a major covert proxy war against the Soviet forces by working with Pakistan. Even Saudi Arabia had a motivation. It aligned with Western countries. It was already an ally of the US. Soviet Union had geopolitical issues with Soviet Union. So Saudi Arabia aligned with Pakistan. It would support Pakistan in setting up radical madrasas along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. See, Saudi Arabia also had one more motivation here. Saudi Arabia has always seen itself as a leader of the Muslim world, of the Sunni world. It wants to retain its dominance within the Sunni world at any cost. It has been known to back radical ideologies such as Wahhabism and Salafism. Wahhabism and Salafism are radical versions of Sunni Islam, which is a misinterpreted version of religion. So governments have promoted the misinterpretation of religion for their geopolitical interests. That's why I've insisted in every class that religion is not the root of any extremism. No religion preaches extremism. Right? In every religion you find a strand of extremism. It's because of such elements, such political elements, who misuse religion, give it a wrong interpretation for their geopolitical reasons. We saw Pakistan has done the same. Pakistan has used terrorism as a geopolitical weapon against India. Right? It has misused religion. So Saudi Arabia has this history of promoting radical ideologies and funding radical madrasas around the world. Along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, Saudi Arabia would fund several radical madrasas which would be backed by Pakistan. And Pakistan's ISI and its army would play a critical role in radicalizing, recruiting the Pashtuns. The Pashtuns who were the most affected by the Soviet invasion, they were targeted by Western countries. The US would provide all the funds, the weapons. The CIA would play a direct role in this covert conflict. The CIA would work with the ISI along with other European intelligence agencies. Right? UK, Germany, they were all on one side. Even France, all the NATO allies essentially. And Saudi Arabia. Through their intelligence agencies, they would support Pakistan's ISI, give Pakistan all the funds and weapons and support needed to radicalize the Pashtuns and establish this insurgent group, this radical insurgent terrorist outfit called the Afghan Mujahideen. Excuse me. So this is how the Mujahideen forces were raised, by setting up a terror sanctuary along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Is that clear? This is when Pakistan gained a lot of experience in covert warfare. It was the same time when Pakistan had sworn to take revenge against India, if you remember. Right? Pakistan was looking for opportunities to wage such a covert war against India, and around the same time, this opportunity opened up in Afghanistan. Is that clear? So Pakistan now played a crucial role for US and the Western countries to counter the Soviet Union by raising this extremist force called Afghan Mujahideen. The Afghan Mujahideen was mainly made up of the Pashtuns who had been radicalized in these madrasas. They had been trained, given funds and weapons, from the Western countries through Pakistan's ISI, and Afghan Mujahideen was set up as a resistance force against the occupying Soviet forces. So thus began a decade of conflict in Afghanistan, lasting from 1980 to 1990s. The Soviet forces were targeted by the Afghan Mujahideen. The Afghan Mujahideen would launch an insurgent war. They would launch a major insurgency against the occupying Soviet forces, and this essentially was the American Cold War against the Soviet Union. It was American covert war against the Soviet Union with the help of Pakistan. So by 1989, the Soviet forces were weakened by the Afghan Mujahideen. As I told you, Pashtuns are known to resist. They're known to fight. They're known to resist any outside interference and occupation. So Pashtuns fought back against the Soviet forces now that they had the complete support of Pakistan and Western countries. They had a free flow of weapons and funds, and a terror factory had been set up. It was nothing short of a terror factory along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So with this support, the Mujahideen fought back against Soviet forces, and by 1989, they forced the Soviet Union to retreat. The Soviet Union couldn't withstand the insurgent attack. The attacks kept mounting against Soviet forces. They suffered tremendous losses. And by that time, communism started weakening. Communism started seeing a decline in East Europe. Communist ideology was coming down very quickly. Across Central and Eastern Europe, there was a transformation happening. Germany reunified. The Berlin Wall was brought down in 1989, and Germany reunified. And across Central East European countries, communism and socialism saw a defeat. Most communist countries like Poland, Romania, and others, they all started adopting democracy. They moved away from Soviet influence. Eventually, the Soviet economy itself got weakened. Right? The communist socialist model had failed. It had weakened the Soviet Union. It had led to a lot of corruption. Its economy had been destroyed. Plus, the Afghan war had drained the Soviet resources. So by 1989, 1990, Soviet Union was a dead power. It was a power of the decline, a power of the collapse. So finally, the Soviet forces retreated from Afghanistan, and this eventually became one of the reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union, for the final collapse, the disintegration in 1991, which brought the Cold War to an end. So the Cold War ended with the collapse and disintegration of Soviet Union. So a part of the reason was the defeat that Soviet Union suffered in Afghanistan. Right? The Pashtuns, the Afghan Mujahideen, they had fought back against a major power. They targeted the Soviet forces and forced them to retreat, which marked the defeat of Soviet Union. So thus, Soviet Union also lost in Afghanistan. It became another victim as part of the graveyard of empires. So as Soviet forces retreated, right, Afghanistan descended into a civil war. There was no government, no stable government, no single entity to establish a strong, stable government, and the country descended into a civil war between different warlords, between different factions of the Mujahideen. Is that clear? The various factions of the Mujahideen, the different warlords, they started fighting each other for control of power. Few governments were formed, but they would be toppled very quickly. The governments would be thrown out because there was a power struggle going on in Afghanistan, which pushed the country into a brutal civil war from 1990 to 1996. Is that clear? So this is what happened after Soviet forces retreated. Because as the Americans won the Cold War, they conveniently ignored Afghanistan. They didn't care about what happens with Afghanistan in the region. They had played a direct role in creating a radical extremist force. They had enabled Pakistan, supported Pakistan in every possible way to engineer this radicalization in the region. But without caring about its impact and consequences, the US also retreated. The US took its attention away from Afghanistan and Pakistan, and it didn't care what Pakistan would do. By this time, by 1980s, I've explained in the last class, Pakistan had already linked. It had formed a direct link between the Afghan war and the Khalistan movement, and later with the insurgency and terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. From early 1980s itself, Pakistan, which had sworn revenge against India, which had committed to bleed India to 1,000 cuts, saw this as a great opportunity to target India. Because it had great global support. Pakistan had become a very important geopolitical ally for Western countries. They wouldn't question what Pakistan would do. They wouldn't hold Pakistan accountable. Pakistan had easy access to funds and weapons, and a terror sanctuary had been created along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So Pakistan conveniently diverted the same funds, weapons, and the terror infrastructure to target India by launching a major covert proxy war against India. Pakistan would exploit India's internal divides, which had opened up during the same period. Right? Khalistan movement had started by 1979-1980. Pakistan would further enable this by giving them all the support necessary. Khalistan groups would be trained in the same terror camps where Mujahideen fighters were being trained. The same funds and weapons coming from Western countries, Saudi Arabia, would be diverted by Pakistan to fund Khalistan movement against India. There was a direct link between Afghan war and Khalistan movement created by Pakistan's ISI. Later in 1987, when problems started in Jammu and Kashmir, when a separatist movement broke out, Pakistan immediately lashed onto this opportunity as well and pushed the Mujahideen fighters into Jammu and Kashmir. I explained yesterday how Afghan Mujahideen fighters were brought into Kashmir to further enhance or increase the intensity of the conflict. Right? So Pakistan linked the insurgency and terrorism in J&K with the Afghan war. It created many terror groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed later, Hizbul Mujahideen and all the others. And they would all share the same infrastructure and the same connections. So along this border area, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region, in the tribal belt, and along the Balochistan border as well, multiple terror sanctuaries would be created by Pakistan, where anti-India terror groups were nurtured by the Pakistani state. So Pakistan fueled the Kashmir conflict, it fueled Khalistan movement by directly linking them with the Afghan war. India would appeal to the Western countries. We even gave evidence to them to show what Pakistan was doing, but they did not care. They wouldn't care about it because India was hostile according to them. Remember, India had aligned with Soviet Union, and we had a difficult relationship with the US, and US was firmly with Pakistan. US and Pakistan were very close allies. So US would protect Pakistan, it wouldn't care about Indian interests, and this allowed Pakistan to easily wage this overt war against India. That is why India is so concerned about what happens in Afghanistan. The developments in Afghanistan have a direct bearing on our national security interests, because Pakistan is the one which has created this link between anti-India terror groups and the terror sanctuaries located along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. All right. So the country had descended into a civil war. Different factions of the Mujahideen were fighting for control. The warlords were fighting against each other. All right. Few governments were formed, but they would be toppled very quickly. And this was a classic civil war condition in Afghanistan. In the midst of all this chaos, in the midst of what was happening, there was a new outfit that came up called the Taliban, which was a byproduct of the Afghan Mujahideen itself. From the Afghan Mujahideen, few radical students, the younger recruits, right, who were more radical than the Mujahideen itself, they founded a new organization called Taliban, which came up as a radical extremist outfit. To begin with, it was a political insurgent outfit. All right, it was not exactly a terrorist group, but it was more of a political insurgent group. It believed in extreme religion, believed in promoting religious fundamentalism, and this outfit was directly backed by Pakistan. Pakistan would support some of the younger student leaders within the Mujahideen. They would go on to form the Taliban, and with the direct support of Pakistan, Taliban captured power in Afghanistan. It toppled the remnant of the governments that existed, and it captured complete power in 1996. This is how Taliban came to power. It formed the government of Afghanistan and turned Afghanistan into an Islamic emirate, into an Islamic state. And it firmly established its rule from 1996 to 2001. This was the first rule of the Taliban government. Understood? And Pakistan was a direct backer and supporter of the Taliban. So as Taliban captured power, it formed its own government. Most countries didn't recognize the government because it was a radical extremist outfit. Immediately, Taliban started targeting religious minorities. It started targeting women. It enforced the rigid Sharia law, and religious minorities became the target of the Taliban. The remaining minority communities, for example, there were few Sikhs. Even today, there are few Sikh communities in Afghanistan. There were Buddhists, right? Few Hindus as well, Christians, and even Muslims who didn't subscribe to the radical ideology. They would all be targeted by Taliban and leading to large-scale human rights violations. The rigid Sharia law would be enforced by Taliban, especially targeting women. A rigid dress code, and women would be prohibited from attending schools and colleges. School-going girls were targeted, right? Fatwas would be issued against women who would break any of these codes. They couldn't even venture out of their house to do anything. They would need the permission of the male member in the family, right? They would be prohibited from taking jobs. So essentially, Afghanistan was turned into a conservative country where minority rights and women's rights were being openly violated. Now, this is quite shocking because if you look at Afghanistan in 1960s, 1970s, it was actually a much more open society. It was a very open society back then. But because of geopolitics, because of Soviet Union, because of US, because of Pakistan, because of Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan reached a state where the country was collapsing. Its society had collapsed. Radical forces had been given complete control, and as a result, these large-scale violations were happening. The Taliban would invite all radical elements from around the world. It gave an open invitation. It said, radicals from around the world can come here. They will be sheltered, they will be protected. And that is how Al-Qaeda shifted base to Afghanistan under Osama bin Laden. By then, Osama bin Laden, a Saudi national who came from an affluent family, right? He was well educated as well, but he had been radicalized. He had set up this outfit, the initial version of the Al-Qaeda, right? Because he held Western countries responsible for all the problems in the Muslim world. Some of these radical elements, they were present across different countries, across West Asia and North Africa, from Egypt to Libya to Saudi Arabia, Sudan, right? In Palestine, all across these regions, there were many radical elements who subscribed to this ideology that Western countries were the root of all problems in the Muslim world. That is in the Middle East, North Africa region. So based on this ideology to target the West, to target all the kafirs, all the non-believers, groups like Al-Qaeda were being formed, and Osama bin Laden shifted base to Afghanistan because Taliban gave an open invite saying that we'll shelter, protect all the radical forces so they could unite to form an Islamic state. So as Al-Qaeda was sheltered in Afghanistan, very quickly it became a terror sanctuary. And Pakistan was right in the middle of this. Pakistan's ISI had links with all these entities. I hope you can see the connections here. On one hand, Pakistan was backing anti-India terror groups, including Khalistan outfits and the Kashmir-centric groups, right? It was backing groups like Lashkar, Hizbul Mujahideen and the others. It built contacts with the newly formed Al-Qaeda. It had complete close relations with the Taliban and the former Mujahideen elements. It had contacts with all factions of the Taliban as well. So essentially, the whole region here, Afghanistan and Pakistan, became a terror sanctuary, a terror hub. And there were direct links with organized crime, especially with drugs. Afghan drugs and the arms trafficking here have played a direct role in fueling terrorism all across the region. And Pakistan's ISI has enabled this. There are many criminal cartels which operate here, including the Dawood Company or the D Gang or the Dawood Ibrahim Gang. There are many such notorious criminal cartels which have been sheltered and protected by the ISI, right? They all collude, they all work together. The ISI protects all these radical forces, criminal groups. It allows the business to flourish, the drug and weapon business, right? This gives revenue for these outfits and they enforce these radical policies, thus breeding terrorism in this entire region, all right? So the biggest threat from all of this was for India and few other countries as well. So as Taliban formed this government and started sheltering all the terrorist groups, India immediately saw this as a threat. We cut off ties with Afghanistan. India broke all its ties with Afghanistan because we did not recognize the Taliban government. We branded Taliban as a terrorist organization, as it had direct links with Al-Qaeda, and more importantly, it had links with Lashkar-e-Toiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, and also some Khalistan elements had links with the Taliban outfits. Since it was a puppet of Pakistan, right? India couldn't build relations with Taliban. There was no way we could recognize this government, and hence we declared it as a terrorist organization. The Taliban as well cut off ties with India, of course, at Pakistan's instructions. It threw out the Indian diplomats. The Indian embassy was shut in Afghanistan, and we lost full contact with Afghanistan. So as this was a serious security threat for India, we knew that Pakistan is going to use this to further terrorism against India. India decided to counter this. We aligned with like-minded countries such as Iran and Russia. India aligned with these countries which had common concerns about Taliban, and we launched our own covert war to counter the Taliban. Is that clear? We supported the northern tribes under the Northern Alliance. We gave secret support to the Northern Alliance to target Taliban because they were rivals of each other. Remember, Taliban is dominated by Pashtuns from the southern parts of Afghanistan. But in the north, I told you there are many tribes, including the Tajiks, Uzbeks, and the other tribes. They have a historical rivalry with the Pashtun community. So all these northern tribes were brought together under the Northern Alliance, under the leadership of a legendary fighter called the Lion of the Panjshir Valley. The Panjshir Valley is a strategic location in northern Afghanistan. It's a well-protected area naturally. There are mountains and there's a valley hidden inside the mountains, right? And this region, the Panjshir Valley, is considered as impenetrable. From the outside, it's very difficult to attack the Panjshir Valley. There are natural defenses. The geography is very complicated. So in the Panjshir Valley, the Northern Alliance set up itself as a resistance against the Taliban. It was led by one legendary fighter called Ahmad Shah Massoud. Ahmad Shah Massoud, he hated the Taliban. He had a direct rivalry with Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and all the terror groups. So he was called the Lion of Panjshir Valley for resisting the Taliban. So India, Iran, and Russia, which had common interests, they aligned together to launch a secret war against Pakistan and the Taliban, and we started supporting the Northern Alliance. And India especially built very, very close relations with Ahmad Shah Massoud. All right? India's intelligence agency, RAW, was leading this covert war. Iran and its intelligence agencies were part of it because for Iran, Taliban was a threat. Don't forget, Taliban is a Sunni radical group, whereas Iran is a Shia power, a leader of the Shia world. So Iran and Afghanistan are neighbors. So when a radical Sunni group captured power in Afghanistan, Iran felt threatened. Iran was a Shia country and it felt threatened by a Sunni radical outfit. And obviously, Russia hated the Taliban because Taliban was a byproduct of the Mujahideen, which had defeated Soviet Union. Right? So all these countries, they had a direct motivation to target the Taliban. So together, they launched a covert war. Russia would allow us to set up a support base in Central Asia. Since Russia remained influential in Central Asia, even after the disintegration of Soviet Union, it helped India to have a base in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. These countries were very close to India from the very beginning. India, Iran, and Russia together operated few bases. Even today, we reportedly have access to some of these military bases. You have the Farkhor Air Base and the Aini Air Base in Central Asia. Both are strategically located. These are former Soviet military facilities, which today belong to these Central Asian countries. So here, we would set up the facilities needed to support the Northern Alliance and extend support to Ahmad Shah Massoud. So India's RAW would channel funds and weapons to Northern Alliance along with Iran and Russia, and we set up a resistance against the Taliban. Is that clear? So this was the situation in Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001. But in the meantime, the Al-Qaeda was becoming very, very powerful. As US and Western countries weren't paying enough attention, under Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda had risen to power as a global terrorist organization with global support. It was headquartered here in Afghanistan under the protection of Taliban government, and it had contacts and support from multiple countries around the world where radicals and extremists were supporting the Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda had declared war against the Western countries, especially against the US and European countries, and it had started planning attacks against the US and against Europe. Is that clear? In 1993 itself, Al-Qaeda carried out its first major attack in US, where it tried to bomb the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center in New York was bombed by Al-Qaeda in a partially successful attack. A car which was laden with explosives was parked in the basement, and this attack killed a few Americans. It was a partially successful attack, but this was the first major strike of Al-Qaeda on American soil. After this, in late 1990s, the Al-Qaeda started stepping up its attacks across Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Al-Qaeda had a lot of support across few parts of Africa, especially in East Africa. Is that clear? In Kenya, in Tanzania, Al-Qaeda had created a support base for itself, also in the Arabian Peninsula in countries like Yemen. So across the Middle East, North Africa region, Al-Qaeda had built up a lot of support, and using this support, it started targeting Western interests. In Yemen, a US naval ship was targeted by the Al-Qaeda in late 1990s. A US naval ship called USS Cole was passing near Yemen in the Arabian Sea, and Al-Qaeda bombed the naval ship, killing many American soldiers. In Kenya and Tanzania, the American embassies were targeted by Al-Qaeda in a massive attack. Hundreds of people were killed, including American diplomats, and Al-Qaeda was just starting. It was just beginning. Now the US started paying more attention to this group. It was looking to target the Al-Qaeda, and it was looking for support from Pakistan and also from Taliban. But by this point, it was already too late. Al-Qaeda had gone beyond control. It was a very powerful organization at this point, and it went on to carry out the... But by this point, it was already too late. Al-Qaeda started paying more attention to this group. It was looking to target the Al-Qaeda, and it was looking for support from Pakistan and also from Taliban. But by this point, it was already too late. Al-Qaeda had gone beyond control. It was a very powerful organization at this point, and it went on to carry out the biggest attacks we've ever seen, the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Is that clear? So Al-Qaeda terrorists, they had breached the American defenses, they had entered US, they trained in American flying schools how to fly commercial aircraft, and they eventually hijacked 4 passenger planes and flew them. Had gone beyond control. It was a very powerful organization. A US naval ship called USS Cole was passing near Yemen in the Arabian Sea, and Al-Qaeda bombed the naval ship, killing many American soldiers. In Kenya and Tanzania, the American embassies were targeted by Al-Qaeda in a massive attack. Hundreds of people were killed, including American diplomats, and Al-Qaeda was just starting. It was just beginning. Now the US started paying more attention to this group. It was looking to target the Al-Qaeda, and it was looking for support from Pakistan and also from Taliban. But by this point, it was already too late. Al-Qaeda had gone beyond control. It was a very powerful organization at this point, and it went on to carry out the biggest attacks we've ever seen, the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Is that clear? So Al-Qaeda terrorists, they had breached the American defenses, they had entered US, they trained in American flying schools how to fly commercial aircraft, and they eventually hijacked 4 passenger planes and flew them as missiles. They flew them as missiles into strategic buildings. It was one of the most sophisticated attacks that we had ever witnessed. The World Trade Center was targeted. Both the towers were brought down. The Pentagon, which is the headquarters of the US Department of Defense, was hit, and another plane was likely headed towards either White House or the Congress. But luckily, the passengers who realized what was happening, they brought down this flight. It crashed in a field in Pennsylvania, killing only the passengers and the crew and the terrorists, of course, but it didn't reach the eventual target. Possibly it was either White House or the US Congress. But the terrorists managed to hit World Trade Center. Both the towers, the North and South towers, were brought down, and the Pentagon was hit. This was the biggest terror attack, of course, on American soil and around the world. More than 3,000 people were killed, and this pushed US to declare a global war on terrorism. It declared a global war on terrorism, and right now, Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden were the prime targets for the US. The US approached the UN. It got complete support from all the NATO allies. All the Western allies from Europe, they backed US. And even at the United Nations, it got an approval from the UN Security Council to invade Afghanistan. Because when US declared the global war on terrorism, it asked the Taliban government to cooperate. It demanded that the Taliban government should cooperate and help the US and the NATO to hunt Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. But Taliban refused. Taliban wouldn't give up its brothers. Taliban looks at Al-Qaeda and other terror groups as brother organizations. It protected them and it said it's not going to help and help Western countries to target these outfits. So as Taliban refused to cooperate, US declared war on Afghanistan itself. Now the target became Taliban, not just Al-Qaeda. So with the approval of UN, NATO coalition forces, a coalition force was set up called ISAF, International Security Assistance Force. All right, International Security Assistance Force was a coalition force led by US. All NATO countries contributed troops. From Britain to Australia, from Canada to Belgium, Italy, all these NATO countries, they all contributed troops to this coalition force and they invaded Afghanistan in 2001. They brought down the Taliban government. It was toppled within months. All right, the Taliban government was toppled. And then the US started hunting for Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and other terror groups that operate in the region. But however, much before this, Pakistan, which saw these terror groups as an asset against India, had already protected the top leadership of these groups. Is that clear? See, Pakistan is always right in the middle of this conflict, and India has a link, India has a connection with whatever happens in Afghanistan. Pakistan has seen Afghanistan as a strategic debt against India. Ever since India broke Pakistan into two parts, Pakistan has always feared a major invasion from India, a possible invasion from India. It has always tried to gain that additional debt, a strategic debt, to protect its core assets away from India's reach. And Afghanistan was the answer. Since Afghanistan is located away from India, this was a region where Pakistan could possibly push its troops, maybe even its nuclear arsenal, which was just being built, push them towards Afghan border to keep it away from India's reach. This was a Cold War military strategy of Pakistan. Pakistan believed that tomorrow there is another war. If India were to attack Pakistan, India might breach Pakistani territory. We might invade into Pakistan. So Pakistan feared a possible Indian invasion and it wanted the additional depth to protect its core assets to keep it away from India's reach. This was a traditional military concept. That is why Pakistan has always destabilized Afghanistan. As long as Afghanistan is destabilized, it will be under Pakistan's control. That's why Pakistan does not want a strong government in Afghanistan. It does not want a stable democratic government. So by breeding terrorism, radicalism, it has destabilized Afghanistan to gain that strategic depth against India. The thinking in 1980s was if there is an attack from India, Pakistan's core assets, that is the military troops and the nuclear forces, can be pushed towards the Afghan border to keep it away from India's reach. This concept has been further taken up by Pakistan to treat terror groups also as an asset. Just breeding terrorism here along the Afghan-Pakistan border is seen as an asset by Pakistan to counter India. Pakistan sees this as absolutely essential to keep India on the back foot. That is why Pakistan would not give up control or contacts with these terrorist organizations. When US launched this war, it made it clear to Pakistan that it had to cooperate. Pakistan didn't have any other choice. Because US knew the double game Pakistan was playing. Pakistan was not only helping Western countries, it was working with the terror groups as well. US knew this. And yet, US wanted Pakistan's support because of the contacts it had with Taliban, Al-Qaeda and other terror groups. Without Pakistan's support, without the support of the ISI and the army, the US knew it's not going to win the war in Afghanistan. To topple the Taliban government, to throw Taliban out of power, to target Al-Qaeda and to capture or kill Osama bin Laden, right? US needed the help of Pakistani agencies. So Pakistan was forced to cooperate here, and hence the ISI and the army hatched a conspiracy. Even before the invasion, they decided to protect their core asset. They decided to protect the Taliban and Al-Qaeda leadership before the Western troops can invade Afghanistan. Just weeks before the invasion, the ISI carried out a covert airlift called the Kunduz airlift. Kunduz is a place in Afghanistan, and the Pakistani armed forces with the ISI carried out an airlift where the top Taliban leaders, terrorists, and Al-Qaeda leaders were secured. They were airlifted from Afghanistan, brought into Pakistan. Even before Western troops could invade the country, the top leadership had been taken away by Pakistan. The leader of Taliban, Mullah Omar, and the top leadership, the Shura, or the council, all right? The top leaders of Taliban who formed the Shura, the political council, they were all protected and sheltered in Quetta, which is in Balochistan. They were taken across the border by the ISI and the army. Later, as we got to know, Osama bin Laden was also sheltered at Abbottabad, right next to Pindi, Rawalpindi, right near Islamabad. On the outskirts of Islamabad, you have Rawalpindi, which is the military headquarters of the Pakistani army, and right next to it, you have the outskirts, the suburbs of Abbottabad. So right at the nerve center of Pakistan, the world's most wanted terrorists had been sheltered. And obviously, this was with the support and help of Pakistani state agencies. I'm mentioning this because India had monitored the Kunduz airlift. India had sufficient assets in Afghanistan at that point. Since we were fighting the covert war against Taliban and against the ISI, RAW had intelligence about the Kunduz airlift, and we informed the US what Pakistan was doing. India gave this vital piece of intelligence. We informed about the Kunduz airlift, where Pakistan was directly helping Taliban and Al-Qaeda terrorists to escape before the invasion, and they were being sheltered in Pakistan itself. So this created a ground for India and US to become closer, to start working together, at least in the field of counterterrorism, because we both had common concerns. For India, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and all the terror groups were a threat. The ISI was a threat. The US also started doubting Pakistan's intentions, and India-US started working together to share intelligence. Intelligence cooperation began, and they both started cooperating in the field of counterterrorism. This is how India-US relations improved. It's because of this, India-US relations started transforming. Before this, US was very hostile to India. You saw what US did in 1971. I told you throughout 1980s, 1990s, US kept targeting our nuclear and space program. It tried to derail our nuclear and space program. When we tested nuclear weapons, US hit India with economic and technological sanctions. Right? Even in 2001, India was still under American sanctions. But because of the developments in Afghanistan, India-US started working together in the defense and security domain. We started sharing valuable intelligence with the US, and US saw that India could be a great friend, a democratic country, a like-minded country with common interests in countering terrorism. So from here onwards, both the countries started working together, sharing intelligence with each other to counter terrorism that emanates from Afghanistan and Pakistan. All right, this laid the foundation for strong India-US relations. That's why the 9/11 attacks, it is seen as a landmark event, a turning point in global geopolitics. It changed the very nature of geopolitics. So the US got involved in a prolonged conflict here in Afghanistan. It was being betrayed by Pakistan itself. It was playing a double game here. And US-India relations started strengthening from here onwards. Now, just to give you an idea to what extent Pakistan can go to protect the terror groups, to protect its interests, let me tell you something very interesting. Right before 9/11 attacks, on September 10, 2001, just one day before 9/11 attacks, Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was the biggest asset of India in Afghanistan, right? India was backing him. India's RAW was supporting Ahmad Shah Massoud. We had direct contacts with the Northern Alliance. through the Central Asian military bases, we were completely supporting Ahmad Shah Massoud. Just one day before the attack, he was assassinated by terrorists linked to Taliban. Is that clear? They planned a surprise attack and assassinated Ahmad Shah Massoud. Of course, Pakistan was behind it. Now, what's the importance of this event? It shows the fact that Pakistan, at least some elements in Pakistan, the Taliban as well, they knew what would happen the next day. They knew what would happen in the next 24 hours. They knew that the September 11th attacks would be carried out. It would invite a retaliation from the US, right? So they had to take care of their immediate enemies. And Ahmad Shah Massoud and Northern Alliance were the immediate threat for Taliban, right? They were the immediate threat for Pakistan's ISI. So just one day before the attack, Ahmad Shah Massoud was assassinated by the Taliban with the help of Pakistan. It shows that some elements in ISI, some of the Taliban elements, they knew about the upcoming Al-Qaeda attacks, the 9/11 attacks in the US. They protected their interests by eliminating their enemy, their biggest rival, that is the Northern Alliance and Ahmad Shah Massoud. Is that clear? In fact, when US began the invasion, even the US worked with Northern Alliance. There were other leaders of Northern Alliance like General Dostum and others who supported the CIA and the American forces to invade Afghanistan, to topple the Taliban government. These assets were nurtured by India, Iran, and Russia, right? So that is the kind of complex geopolitics the region has seen, and it shows what Pakistan can do. It shows the deep involvement of ISI and the army with all these terrorist outfits. They took out Ahmad Shah Massoud just one day before the attack so that if US retaliates, they would know that Taliban will not have an immediate internal threat, right? It was obvious that US would collaborate with Northern Alliance and Ahmad Shah Massoud would be their point of contact. So the immediate rival was eliminated just one day before the attack, and this is not a coincidence. Is that clear? Plus, India gave intelligence about the Kunduz airlift, how Pakistan was securing all the Taliban and Al-Qaeda terrorists. So this brought India-US closer, and parallelly, the US got involved in a prolonged conflict in Afghanistan. Immediately, the Taliban government was toppled, and in 2001, a civilian government was installed in Afghanistan. A civilian democratic government was installed, which was backed by the Western countries, supported by the US, and India was waiting for this opportunity. Now that Taliban had been thrown out and a civilian democratic government had been installed, this was the perfect opportunity for India. So we reached out to the Afghan government and built very, very close relations with the new Afghan government. The president was Hamid Karzai, who has been very, very close to India. Hamid Karzai grew up in India. He has studied in India. Since many, many years, Indian agencies have had contacts with Hamid Karzai. So a very close friend of India became the president of Afghanistan, and naturally, India and Afghanistan became very close partners. This was the opportunity for us to counter Pakistan, and India stepped up its involvement in Afghanistan. Until then, we had a very, very limited presence. We had been thrown out by Taliban. So as a friendly government was formed, India-Afghan relations Hamid Karzai, who has been very, very close to India. Hamid Karzai grew up in India. He has studied in India. Since many, many years, Indian agencies have had contacts with Hamid Karzai. So a very close friend of India became the president of Afghanistan, and naturally, India and Afghanistan became very close partners. This was the opportunity for us to counter Pakistan, and India stepped up its involvement in Afghanistan. Until then, we had a very, very limited presence. We had been thrown out by Taliban. So as a friendly government was formed, India-Afghan relations started developing. All right, India-Afghan relations started strengthening from here onwards, and we played a critical role in reconstructing Afghanistan. India would invest $3 billion over the next 20 years. We invested $3 billion as assistance to Afghanistan to rebuild the economy, to reconstruct the country. We took up many critical projects, and you should know about this. India built the Afghan parliament in Kabul to strengthen democracy in the country. We built the Salma Hydro project. The Salma Hydropower Dam was built by India to provide electricity to Afghanistan. We built many schools and hospitals to help the people of Afghanistan who have always been very, very close to India. The people of Afghanistan in general, they have a lot of goodwill towards India, even today, right? Even some members of the Taliban as well, right? They have a very good image towards India. It's a soft image we have built for many years. There's a civilizational connect as well, plus there's a soft power image, which India has been able to gain in the region, right? Especially Indian movies, Bollywood movies are very popular since 1960s, 1970s. So that has a role to play. Soft power plays a very important role. So India has that natural appeal, natural influence. By and large, the people of Afghanistan, they were very supportive towards India. So we helped the people of Afghanistan by building schools and hospitals. We built a very, very important road connecting Zaranj and Dilaram. The Zaranj-Dilaram highway was built by India. So such massive projects were taken up by India, and we had invested a total of $3 billion in the country. Is that clear? We quickly expanded our diplomatic influence, right? As soon as the new government was formed, we reopened our embassy in Kabul. Along with the Indian embassy, we set up 4 consulates at Mazar-e-Sharif. We had invested in Dilaram. Important road connecting Zaranj and Dilaram. The Zaranj-Dilaram highway was built by India. So such massive projects were taken up by India, and we had invested a total of $3 billion in the country. Is that clear? We quickly expanded our diplomatic influence, right? As soon as the new government was formed, we reopened our embassy in Kabul. Along with the Indian embassy, we set up 4 consulates at Mazar-e-Sharif, Herat, Kandahar, and Jalalabad. So that is the diplomatic presence of India that we built between 2001 and 2021. We had 1 embassy and 4 consulates, which clearly highlighted our interest in the country, our investments here, because we wanted not just to rebuild Afghan's economy, we also wanted to counter terrorism that emanates from here. We wanted to ensure that we check Pakistan's support of terror groups against India. This became the priority for India. So that is why India built this influence very quickly, and we became one of the close partners of Afghanistan. We even got Afghanistan a membership in the SAARC grouping. Afghanistan became a SAARC member because of India, right? It was seen as a South Asian country, and it was given membership in the SAARC. We started working together. We started building very close relations. But the United States ended up making mistakes after mistakes, which has cost the region, which has cost India as well. Let's see what happened parallelly. Ideally, the US should have focused on Afghanistan, and the target should have been Al-Qaeda, the other terror groups, and the Taliban. Correct? This is what the US should have done. Yes, they toppled the government. They succeeded in invading the country, toppled the government, and they were targeting Al-Qaeda and Taliban and the terror groups. But the problem was, the US was still not putting enough pressure on Pakistan. There were many other terror groups which were not being targeted. They were being spared. For example, the Haqqani network, which is a faction of the Taliban, was not a priority for the US. The US only wanted Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and its top leadership. They didn't care about other terror groups such as Lashkar-e-Toiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, Jaish-e-Mohammed, and the others. These were Pakistani assets to target India. So Pakistan continued using these groups to target India, but the US wouldn't put the pressure on Pakistan to target these terror outfits as well. This again shows the hypocrisy of the US. Basically, they distinguish between so-called good terrorists and bad terrorists. They only target those terror groups who are targeting them. Since Lashkar was not targeting them, since Hizbul or Jaish weren't targeting US and European countries, they did not care about these groups. Even though India was a close friend right now, still they wouldn't act, they wouldn't put that pressure on Pakistan, they would allow Pakistan to wage its war against India. This has always been frustrating for India. See, you cannot fight terrorism selectively. That's what India has always been saying. If you want to fight terrorism, you have to fight all forms of terrorism. You can't fight only Al Qaeda, only Taliban, and allow other terror groups which are in the same region to flourish. Because these groups are interconnected, they're all linked. Pakistan is the common link. They all share the same infrastructure. So if you're only selectively targeting some groups and some terrorists and letting the others to thrive, how will you defeat terrorism? This has been India's point right from the start. But US and Western countries, like I said, they have their own selfish interests. They didn't care about India. They just targeted Al Qaeda and few terrorists by leaving out the other terror groups. Throughout this period, Pakistan used Haqqani Network to launch multiple attacks against India in Afghanistan. Haqqani Network is very close to Pakistan. It's a faction, a branch of the Taliban itself. And through Haqqani Network, many attacks have happened against India in Afghanistan. The Indian embassy in Kabul has been attacked multiple times. Indian consulates have been attacked, Indian projects, Indian engineers. Because of these attacks by Haqqani Network, Indian diplomats, Indian military officials, and intelligence officers have been killed in Afghanistan. And yet, US didn't act against this, and India had to deal with this on its own. Parallelly, Lashkar and other groups, including Jaish-e-Mohammed, they kept getting the support from Pakistan, they kept targeting India. Along with this, if this wasn't enough, the US got distracted from Afghanistan because it opened an unnecessary and a completely fake war in Iraq in 2003. The US and UK, they generated false intelligence against Iraq. They lied to their own people, to the world. They said Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq, was developing WMDs. This was an absolute lie. They generated false intelligence deliberately to justify the invasion of Iraq because they wanted Saddam Hussein to go. This was their geopolitical interest, to change the government in Iraq, to carry out a regime change, to control the geopolitics and the oil markets of West Asia. US and UK fought a fake war. They created false intelligence about the Iraqi government, toppled Saddam Hussein by invading Iraq in 2003. This unnecessary war, illegitimate, illegal invasion of Iraq, distracted the US from the real war in Afghanistan. The Afghan invasion was the real focus. It should have been the real focus. Al Qaeda and terrorism should have been the real focus. They lost the attention by getting involved in an unnecessary war in Iraq, which dragged for years together. Is that clear? So obviously, the attention of the US intelligence and military forces was diverted. Iraq became their obsession, their priority from 2003 till 2010. For almost a decade, they got obsessed with Iraq. They got sidelined and distracted in Afghanistan. Now, I'm sure you can assume what happened. As the US pressure was off in Afghanistan, as they didn't cut off terrorism from the root, the Taliban carried out a resurgence with the help of Pakistan. Pakistan would never give up on Taliban because it's their biggest asset against India. The Taliban started carrying out a resurgence day by day. It started regrouping, rebuilding its strength. And by 2010, you were witnessing the rise of Taliban again, as it was capturing territories slowly, one by one, and was weakening the Afghan government. The Afghan government and Afghan security forces weren't strong enough to defend Afghanistan against the rise of Taliban. They needed foreign assistance. They needed the American help especially. Even though US was still involved in the war, they didn't target the Taliban effectively. They didn't cut off this group entirely because they were distracted and they lost focus. This involvement in Iraq had a huge cost for the region because Taliban regrouped itself, regained the strength, and it revived by 2010. And from here onwards, it launched a major insurgency. It launched an insurgency against Afghan government and as well as the foreign troops. Now the Taliban, which was becoming stronger day by day, started targeting the foreign troops. The international coalition forces and the US troops were targeted, and Afghan government and Afghan security forces became the target. All right. So now this was becoming a protracted war. Both the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq were becoming unpopular in the US. These were prolonged conflicts. It was draining the resources of the US. The US was incurring billions and billions of dollars in expenditure, and more importantly, it was losing soldiers day by day. It was losing its men and women. Every day, American soldiers were coming back in body bags. Right? Every day, US soldiers were losing lives in Afghanistan and Iraq with no end to these wars. So within US, the war became unpopular. By this time, European countries were starting to retreat. European countries which had contributed troops to Afghanistan, they started pulling out. UK pulled out from Iraq as well. So now it just became an American war in Afghanistan and Iraq. So the war became very unpopular. American citizens were questioning the government. Why are we fighting these wars far away without achieving any objective? Right? The money was being drained, the soldiers were getting killed every day. So this became a major political issue by 2010. And this pushed then US President Barack Obama, the then President Obama, to make it a priority to pull out American troops and end the war. This became a priority for the US. As you can see, fighting terrorism was not their priority. Right? Wiping out Taliban, Al Qaeda, and other groups was not a priority. They started the war, got distracted, fought unnecessary wars, and now they wanted to exit. They wanted to run away. Right? It became a political priority for them. They were doing all of this without bothering, without caring about how it would affect others, how it would affect India, Russia, Iran, and Central Asia, because they would all bear the impact of the spillover of terrorism from here. But US would never care about this. It started prioritizing the pull-out, the exit of American troops. So under Obama, the US exited from Iraq. By that point, Iraq was destroyed. Iraq was actually a stable country, even though it was a dictatorship. Right? Iraq was stable. It was a thriving economy, one of the top oil suppliers of the world. The country was destroyed. The Iraqi society was destroyed. Iraq became a breeding ground of terrorism and radicalism, and eventually gave birth to Islamic State. In many ways, US has contributed to the rise of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. It's because of the American military invasion that the stability was destroyed in Iraq. In neighboring Syria, they sponsored a civil war to topple the Syrian government, thereby weakening the governance in Iraq and Syria, and this allowed extremist terror groups to flourish, which led to the formation of Islamic State eventually. Similarly, in Afghanistan, they wanted to exit as soon as possible. So Obama initially ordered a resurgence of troops. To finish the task, Obama deployed more troops in Afghanistan for a short period, but this was not successful. For a few years, US increased troop deployment, So it could achieve the objectives at least to weaken terrorism. But the resurgence of troops did not help the US. So US wanted a symbolic victory, right? At least something to claim. After fighting the war for 10 years, they had something to claim. They wanted something, a result to show to their people. That is where they found out Osama bin Laden, and he was assassinated in 2011. The mastermind of 9/11 attacks, the leader of Al-Qaeda, was assassinated by American special forces. The CIA figured out where he was hiding, right? So obviously he had been sheltered by Pakistan, and the US, which got wind of his presence, planned a special operation and eliminated Osama bin Laden. This was the symbolic victory US was looking for. Now they claimed victory in the war. They said, we have defeated Al-Qaeda. We have taken out the top terrorist. So this excuse allowed US to start pulling up the troops, and President Obama started considering negotiating with the Taliban. By this point, Taliban was controlling 60% of Afghan territory. By 2012-2014, Taliban had made a major resurgence. More than half the country was under Taliban's control. It had directly challenged the legitimacy of the Afghan government itself. Now imagine this, the US, which was targeting Taliban, was now getting ready to talk, to negotiate with the same group. And the US was weakening democracy by sidelining the Afghan government. Afghan government was never strengthened, right? Afghan government had been sidelined. So President Obama started the process of negotiating with Taliban to work out an exit, but by then he lost the Democrat Party lost the elections, and it was up to the next president, Donald Trump, to ensure the pullout of the US. During the 2016 presidential elections, Donald Trump had made it a political priority to pull the American troops out. When the presidential campaign was going on in 2016, Trump made it a very big political issue. He said, if you vote me to power, I will bring American troops back. He made a promise, he made it an electoral commitment. So as soon as he was elected, it became a priority for the US to negotiate with the Taliban and work out an exit, a face-saving exit from Afghanistan. Essentially, the US had been defeated. Another empire had hit the graveyard in Afghanistan, right? They didn't achieve their core objectives. They didn't weaken terrorism here. They didn't defeat Taliban. They didn't wipe out Al-Qaeda, right? And now they were looking to pull out. They were looking to retreat by claiming at least superficial victory. That's why assassination of Osama bin Laden was essential. At least the figurehead was cut off. Now they were looking to strike a deal with Taliban itself so they can claim some victory, achieve some progress, protect their interests, and quit Afghanistan as soon as possible. So under Donald Trump, a special envoy was appointed to talk to Taliban, and Taliban set up a political office in Qatar at Doha. Qatar became the mediator. Qatar is actually a very major power in West Asia. Even though it's a small country, it's very influential. It used its contacts with US and Taliban and brought both of them to the negotiating table. So Taliban was allowed to set up a political office in Doha, basically like an embassy for the Taliban leaders, where they could meet American officials and talk to them. So these negotiations went on for several months, and finally, in 2020, the US-Taliban peace deal was signed. The US-Taliban peace agreement was signed, which is also called the Doha Agreement. Is that clear? The Doha Agreement was sealed by 2020. Is that clear? Now, it's important to understand what were the terms of the agreement. What did US and Taliban agree to? What was the conditions they agreed to? Let me list out these points one by one. Let's see what they agreed to. The US promised to withdraw all the troops. This is what US wanted, to pull all troops as soon as possible. Right? That's what Taliban wanted. Taliban didn't want any foreign troop presence. They wanted all the foreign troops to be taken out. The US said, we'll fix a deadline. Within the deadline, we'll promise that we'll pull out all the troops. In return, Taliban made a commitment. It made a promise to US that Afghan soil will not be used for terrorism against Western interests. Meaning, from Afghanistan, there will be no terrorism against US and European countries. You can see how one-sided this is. First of all, the US was sidelining the Afghan government, the legitimate authority. Afghan government was never involved in the talks. This was a direct negotiation between US government and a radical insurgent terrorist outfit. Afghan government had been sidelined entirely. Right? People of Afghanistan and Afghan government was not included in the peace process to decide what will happen in the future. The US directly struck the deal, which basically was giving legitimacy and recognition to the Taliban. The Taliban just had to promise that it will not attack US. It will not nurture terror groups which will attack European countries and US. What will happen if terror groups target India? What if from Afghan soil there are groups like Haqqani Network, Lashkar-e-Toiba? If they attack India, is it covered? No, it's not. That is the one-sided deal the US worked out, and it kept India completely out of this. India was kept out of all these negotiations. We were never consulted on these issues. India was unhappy with what US was doing, right? But we didn't have any other choice. Is that clear? We kept insisting that the peace process, the Afghan peace process should be Afghan-led. It should be Afghan-owned. Meaning it should be led by the Afghan government, not by the US, not by the Taliban. India kept supporting the Afghan government, saying that this should be an internal process. Afghan government should talk to these extremists and decide what the peace process will be. We insisted on Afghan-led, Afghan-owned process, but the US didn't bother. It didn't pay any attention to this. It kept India out. It struck a deal with Taliban by promising to withdraw troops. And in return, Taliban made one simple commitment that you will not face any attacks. US and European countries will not face attacks. It means other forms of terrorism can flourish. If there is terrorism against India, it can flourish. It's not part of the deal. Along with this, you'll not believe, US agreed to release all the former prisoners. All Taliban, Al-Qaeda prisoners who are in custody, they have been released by the US. Not just by US, it even forced Afghan government to release them. See, over the years, American agencies have captured many Taliban and Al-Qaeda terrorists. Many of them were in Afghan custody as well, with Afghan security forces. The US forced the Afghan government, released all the prisoners back. Many were top leaders of Al-Qaeda and Taliban. They were all released by the US itself from American custody, from Afghan government custody. This was also part of the agreement. All right? This was nothing short of a disaster that the US did. A disastrous deal was worked out. This would only benefit American interests, and it wouldn't protect any interest in the region. So Trump set out the deal, and his successor, Joe Biden, obviously had to follow the deal and uphold the deal. So in 2021, as promised, US started withdrawing the troops. By this point of time, that is by 2021, Taliban had become much, much stronger. By this point of time, Afghan security forces. The US forced the Afghan government, released all the prisoners back. Many were top leaders of Al-Qaeda and Taliban. They were all released by the US itself from American custody, from Afghan government custody. This was also part of the agreement. All right, this was nothing short of a disaster that the US did. A disastrous deal was worked out. This would only benefit American interests and it wouldn't protect any interest in the region. So Trump secured the deal, and his successor, Joe Biden, obviously had to follow the deal and uphold the deal. So in 2021, as promised, US started withdrawing the troops. By this point of time, that is by 2021, Taliban had become much, much stronger. Almost 70 to 80% of the country was under its control. It was a given fact that Afghan government didn't stand a chance. It was a known fact that once US withdraws, Taliban will run over the country. It will throw the government out and it will capture power. Right? That's exactly what happened in September 2021. By August, September 2021, the Taliban ran over the Afghan government and it fully captured power again for the second time. By April to June 2021, US troops had been withdrawn. All the American troops were pulled out without any notice. Right? It was a very surprise pullout, and this left Afghan government on the back foot. Afghan security forces weren't strong enough to withstand the Taliban. The Taliban very quickly captured all the important cities, all the border checkpoints. It captured all these key locations, and eventually it toppled the government in Kabul. The capital was also taken over. It happened at such a rapid pace. Within days, Taliban ran over the country. That clearly shows how ineffective the US operations were. It was a given fact, it was a known fact that this would happen as American troops would leave the country. Right? So as US pulled out, immediately Taliban ran over the country, occupied all the key cities, including the capital, shut off all the border checkposts, and threw out the government and completely captured power. All right? So this triggered a new crisis. It triggered a refugee crisis as well. So as the threat increased, India had to plan evacuations. India had to start evacuating its citizens, its officials, diplomats, and other officers deployed in Afghanistan, and other friends of India, Afghan friends of India, who had worked with the Indian government. They all had to be rescued and pulled out. So for this purpose, we carried out an evacuation mission called Operation Devi Shakti. Through Operation Devi Shakti, India pulled out all the citizens, all the friends of India. They were all brought back safely to India, and a massive refugee crisis was witnessed along Pakistan and Central Asia borders, even at the Iranian border. A lot of Afghans, they fled the country because they feared what will happen to the Taliban. Right? So this is the current situation. The US never included India in any of these processes. We were invited at the last minute when the agreement was signed. India was invited only for signing of Doha agreement. By then the deal had been finalized. India's concerns had never been accepted. All right. Instead, Russia was better. Russia was holding parallel talks called the Moscow format, where Russia was also talking to Taliban to secure its interests. So here India was invited. But unfortunately, India had not opened up to Taliban. India still recognized Taliban as a terrorist outfit. Even until the last minute, we saw Taliban as a terror group. So India wouldn't talk to Taliban because see, this position of India is understandable. For us, the dilemma is Taliban is linked with Pakistan's ISI. It is linked with Lashkar, Jaish-e-Mohammed and others. It's linked with Haqqani network. It's a faction of the Taliban which has killed Indian officials. So how can we talk to such a group? That was the dilemma for India. So India kept looking at Taliban as a terror group. We didn't directly talk to Taliban. We only participated in Moscow format to observe. We went as observers. So many believe this was a strategic mistake on India's part. Because see, technically speaking, Taliban is not exactly a terrorist organization. Taliban is a radical religious political outfit. All right? It's a religious extremist political organization. That is how most countries have seen Taliban. Even the arch enemies of Taliban like Russia, Iran, they have struck deals with Taliban. China, European countries, they all struck their deals to protect their interests. India was the only one which was left out. This is where the policy of the Modi government came in for criticism. Because there was a time where India should have evolved its policy. We should have recognized Taliban and struck a deal to protect our own interests. But India hedged, India hesitated, by which time all the other countries had protected their interests by striking deals, and we had no contact till then with the Taliban. No official contact. We were only invited by US to Doha agreement. When the agreement was signed, we were simply sitting there observing the peace process. So throughout the process, we were out of it. Right? Whenever these talks were happening, we were largely out of it. So eventually, when Taliban captured power, India evacuated, we closed our embassy as well. We shut down our embassy and consulates, cut off all ties, and finally, we opened contact at Doha. India reached out to Taliban. Taliban also reached out to India. And for the first time, direct talks took place between the two sides in 2021. This was after Taliban took over the country. Taliban reached out to India. India also responded, and the Indian ambassador to Qatar met with Taliban leaders. This is the first public contact between India and Taliban. This should have happened many years ago to protect our interests, to protect our investments in the country. Right? Because I'll show you a few maps after this. I'll discuss some projects. You'll understand why Afghanistan is crucial, why our investments are crucial in Afghanistan. So finally, India reached out. Because see, Taliban is craving for recognition this time. This time the Taliban is slightly different. Last time Taliban was brutal. Between 96 and 2001, Taliban was brutal. It was known for its violence, atrocities, and human rights violations. It was known to target minorities and women. But Taliban realized that this will not help its image. If it behaves like this, like a medieval radical outfit, nobody will recognize this country. Right? That's why no one had recognized Taliban, except for a few countries. This time Taliban wanted recognition, to be recognized as the legitimate government, the legitimate authority. So it has given an impression that it cares about human rights, that it wants to provide stable governance. It wants to just form an Islamic emirate, enforce the Sharia law without violating human rights and women's rights. This is the image Taliban has tried to give. This is a deliberate strategy of Taliban. That's why Taliban did not target the former Afghan officials and Afghan soldiers who had surrendered. They were all spared by the Taliban. If it had slaughtered them, committed an atrocity against them, Taliban's image again would have been destroyed. It spared everyone. It did not target the former government officials and military officers and intelligence officers. They were all spared. And it didn't act as expected against minorities. It tried to show that it wouldn't target women's rights as well. Right? Initially, it didn't place much of curbs. And slowly, it started reaching out to other countries. It reached out to other countries asking for help and assistance. Because see, Afghanistan is still under sanctions. All the financial assets of Afghanistan has been frozen, and Afghan economy has been crippled. People are struggling. They don't have basic food, basic supplies. And Taliban wants global support to rebuild the country. So this time it was craving recognition, so it has appeared to show itself as a more moderate group. It's still a radical extremist group, but at least it's giving that image. It has an obligation to appear moderate because it wants recognition. Without recognition, it will not access funds, it will not look after development of the country. That is why Taliban gave this image, and believe it or not, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the interim Taliban government issued a statement. It urged for peace. It gave a huge public statement highlighting the importance of peace, why peace should be maintained in the world, and Taliban was promoting peace, asking Russia to maintain peace in the region. Now look at the irony of this. One of the most radical groups issuing a statement calling for peace against another conflict. This was again deliberate because it was trying to show that Taliban is not the same as it was before. It's a more moderate outfit, just looking to form an Islamic state, just looking to form a stable government. So it has reached out to India, and India has done the right thing by responding to it. In the last 1.5 years, we have responded. First, we sent food aid. We dispatched assistance to the people as they were suffering. And Pakistan gave access to these supplies. Via Pakistan, we supplied essential items to Taliban. Not directly to the hands of Taliban, but to the people of Afghanistan. We worked with UN agencies. And via UN agencies, we have supported Afghan people by supplying food and medicines. And Pakistan also gave access to these supplies. All right, this was the first reach from India towards Taliban. Now, we have started official talks. We have reopened the embassy. India has reopened the embassy. And we are officially in talks with Taliban today. This is the radical shift you see in India's approach and policy towards Taliban. And trust me, it's the right thing to do. We have the opportunity right now to protect our interests by working with Taliban itself. Previously, Taliban might have been hostile to India, but now things would be different. Taliban is craving recognition. And look at the importance of India recognizing Taliban. Let's say tomorrow we legitimately recognize the Taliban government, right? Then if a large democratic country like India is recognizing Taliban government, that is the biggest recognition for Taliban. That's the leverage we have. Plus, Taliban knows we can give investments, funds. Previously, Taliban was short-sighted. Now Taliban has better knowledge, better awareness of geopolitics. It knows India can help. India can give assistance and funds and investments. Plus, if we recognize the Taliban government, right now no country has recognized Taliban government. If India recognizes in the future, right? If India becomes one of the first countries, it will give Taliban a lot of recognition. That's what it is craving. That is the leverage we have. We can use this to keep Taliban away from Pakistan. Our problem shouldn't be with Taliban. Problem is with Pakistan. It's ISI, the other terror groups like Lashkar, Jaish and the others. However, one challenge would be Haqqani network. Here as well, let me tell you something very interesting. It's a very difficult challenge for India. Haqqani network, which is a branch of Taliban, a faction of Taliban. It was founded by Jalaluddin Haqqani. He was a Mujahideen leader. Right now, his son, Sirajuddin Haqqani, is the head of this outfit. Sirajuddin Haqqani is the leader of Haqqani network. All right? It's under Sirajuddin Haqqani that India was attacked multiple times. Right? Indian embassy, Indian consulates, Indian projects, Indian officials, they were all targeted by Haqqani network by Sirajuddin Haqqani. Sirajuddin Haqqani has been designated by UNSC 1267 Sanctions Committee. He has been listed as a global terrorist. He's a UN designated terrorist. And the surprising and interesting point is that Sirajuddin Haqqani is currently the Home Minister of Afghanistan. Now, how's that for a turnaround? A globally designated terrorist by the UN. He's under UN sanctions. He has targeted India repeatedly, worked for the ISI, attacked Indian embassy, killed Indian officials, kidnapped Indian workers. This individual and his group are part of the government today. Sirajuddin Haqqani is the interior minister of the Taliban government. Now, this is a dilemma for India. It remains a challenge for India. So we should see, we should wait and watch how things will develop. And for now, we have reopened talks with Taliban. We are talking to the Taliban government. We have reopened the embassy. And just yesterday, few Afghan officials, that is Taliban officials, have been included in a training exercise under the ITEC program organized by IIM Kozhikode. The Indian Institute of Management Kozhikode has been running a training program, a capacity building program to help small countries develop interest about India. It's running an India immersion course, helping small countries understand the opportunities that lie in India. It's a program under ITEC. Remember, we studied ITEC program. So under the Indian Technical Economic Cooperation Initiative, we are running this training program for many countries. Many officials are participating, and Taliban officials also attended the training. It's a virtual event. It's a virtual training program, and 18 Taliban officials have participated. This would be the first time that Taliban officials have directly taken part in an Indian initiative. This is actually a good sign. It's a positive development. It shows that there is some contact, some negotiations happening between India and Taliban. But the dilemma is always there. How to deal with Haqqani network, Sirajuddin Haqqani and other terrorists who have targeted India, who might continue targeting India. All right. So this would remain a challenge for us. This is where we should work with all the countries. What India did was when Taliban took over, we called a conference of all NSAs of the region. We invited all Central Asian countries, Russia, China, Pakistan, and Iran. We invited all the neighbors for an NSA conference, for a conference between national security advisors. Some of them attended, some did not. All right. Of course, Pakistan wouldn't attend. China also had a very limited participation, but others did participate. So we are working with Central Asian countries, with Russia, and if required, with China, Pakistan, and Iran as well to stabilize the situation. That is one more option that we are pursuing. Working with the regional powers. We are working with European countries and US as well. This remains a focus area. Stabilizing Afghanistan remains a focus. We were also part of a process called Heart of Istanbul process, or Heart of Asia, or also called Istanbul Conference. The Heart of Asia or Istanbul process, that's the right name. It was a process focused on Afghanistan and stabilizing Afghanistan. It was launched many years ago after the US invasion. So all the regional powers would come here, all Central Asian, European, then South Asian countries, they would all get together to discuss the future of Afghanistan. So India is a participant here as well. We have taken part in the Heart of Asia process or the Istanbul process. So we are looking at such regional initiatives or ties with other countries to stabilize the situation in Afghanistan. Our main focus is to counter terrorism, keep Pakistan away, and protect our investments. That is our priority. So how will we do this is something we should wait and watch. And the only approach for us right now is to keep talking to Taliban, protect our interests, build a relationship which is viable, which is practical. You can't be idealistic. You can't simply look at Taliban as a terrorist group. That is an idealistic approach, a short-sighted approach. You have to be pragmatic. Every country has struck a deal with Taliban. Right? Even though they haven't formally recognized the government, they have struck a deal. They have their own talks and secret channels with Taliban. India is the only one which was outside. It's high time we build that. We have started doing that because that's the only way you can protect our interests. All right. So this is the current situation in Afghanistan. All right. So this is a brief summary that you should be aware of regarding the history and the current status. Now let me take you through some important projects of the region which has potential for collaboration between India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. This is the end. This is the last point in my discussion on this important region. I want to show you some important projects in which India is already involved. It has the potential to bring us closer to Pakistan and Afghanistan. The first one is INSTC project, International North-South Transport Corridor. This is a very ambitious project. It was proposed in 1990s actually. But now we are trying to revive this. There are talks of reviving this project. It's a multimodal project connecting India, Iran, and Russia. All right, it's a multimodal transport project. See, under this, India and Russia are pursuing a shorter route. We want a shorter route to Russia. You see, Russia is a very close partner. We have an important trade relationship with Russia, apart from our defense and strategic relations. Right now, the route between India and Russia is very long. It's a very circuitous route. Imagine now if India were to send goods to Russia, or if we were to procure something from Russia, the only route is this blue line that you see. If you dispatch goods from India, it will go through the Arabian Sea, Gulf of Aden, and Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This narrow opening you see here, this one, between Horn of Africa and the Gulf, this is Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It's another choke point, just like Malacca Strait or Hormuz Strait. So the goods will go from here to Gulf of Aden via the Arabian Sea. It will pass the choke point, which is Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It will enter this narrow water channel. This is the Red Sea, the strategically vital Red Sea. Then you have one more choke point over here in Egypt, which is nothing but the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal links Red Sea with Mediterranean Sea. So from here, the ships will reach the Mediterranean, then the Atlantic, and then towards the Northern Seas and Baltic Sea to reach Russia, to reach St. Petersburg. Look at how long and circuitous the route is. So this is not good for trade. The time taken is more, the cost is high. So no wonder we don't have close trading relations with Russia. We don't have a large trading volume. We have a close defense relationship, but the bilateral trade volume is very less because of lack of connectivity. That's why India and Russia are pursuing this project along with Iran and Azerbaijan. The proposal is to connect India with important Iranian ports, such as the Bandar Abbas port. It's a strategic port in Iran. So a sea route over here linking India and Iran, and a road rail network in Iran to take the goods to the Caspian Sea over here. This water body you see here, this white colored region, this is the Caspian Sea. It's not exactly an open sea. It's actually a lake, an Indo-Herric lake, which is landlocked. So the goods can be brought here to Caspian Sea, where Russia and Azerbaijan have already created inland navigation route. Inland shipping is present in the Caspian Sea. So the goods can be taken via the Caspian Sea to reach Russia, and eventually we can extend this as well towards Europe. This is the grand proposal. But the project has not taken off due to various issues. One, India-Iran relations have been badly affected. We'll discuss this later as well in detail. I'll not go into details right now. Just understand India-Iran relations have been very badly affected. All right. So there's no certainty that Iran will cooperate. Plus, Russia is under crippling sanctions. So the project has not started, it has never taken off, but the proposal has been there. It was a proposal brought up in 1990s, and now, post 2010, there was a plan to revive this concept and try and execute this important project. But it hasn't progressed. There has been no progress because of the relations, the state of relations between India and Iran, the sanctions against Russia. Because of all this uncertainty, the project has not started. But in the future, this is one of the potential areas which can bring us closer to Iran and the region and help improve our trade and ties with Russia. Now, this project can be extended. You can see the map here. It's very easy to extend the project to connect with Central Asia via Afghanistan, can be extended to connect with Pakistan as well. The potential exists. So it's a potential opportunity. If we are able to realize this project, we can extend this. We can always extend this to connect with Pakistan and Afghanistan and then link with Central Asia. This would benefit all the countries, especially India, and possibly it could become a common ground that could bring India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan together. Right? It might be an opportunity for us to work with Pakistan and Afghanistan. So that is a suggestion you can provide. And for prelims, you should know what is INSTC project. All right. Then similarly, we have another important project called TAPI pipeline. And for prelims, you should know what is a common ground that could bring India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan together. Prelims, you should know what is INSTC project. All right. Then similarly, we have another important project called TAPI pipeline. The TAPI gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. This is a gas pipeline project pushed by the US, funded by Asian Development Bank. ADB was funding the project. It was supported and backed by the US. This project was seen to benefit Afghanistan's economy, to help rebuild and reconstruct the Afghan economy, which had been destroyed by decades of war. The plan here was to extract natural gas from Turkmenistan, which has the world's fourth largest gas reserves. Turkmenistan is blessed with natural gas. In fact, all Central Asian countries are blessed with natural resources. They have plenty of vital natural resources. So Turkmenistan has a lot of gas reserves, especially at the Galinish natural gas field. So from here, a pipeline was proposed, a gas pipeline linking with Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. The alignment, look at the alignment, it's very important for your prelims. You should know the pipeline's alignment. It passes through Herat, a major city in Afghanistan where India also had a consulate. It passes through Kandahar in the southern Afghanistan region, which is the hub of Taliban. Then it enters Pakistan and passes through Quetta in Balochistan and reaches Multan. And finally, it lands at Fazilka in India, which is a border town in Punjab. This is the ambitious plan. It was supported by the US because US was giving India an alternative. India was actually pursuing one more pipeline almost 15 years back called India-Iran-Pakistan Pipeline, or IPI, India-Pakistan-Iran Pipeline. This was a proposed project to bring gas from Iran via Pakistan and India. It was supposed to be an underwater gas pipeline. It was a very ambitious project that we were considering because before 2010, before 2015, we had very good relations with Iran. Iran was a very, very close friend of India, a strategic partner for India. Our relations have been affected only after 2018. Before 2018, Iran was a very good friend, a very, very close friend for India. So we were considering a possible pipeline with Pakistan, all right, called IPI project. But the US was strongly opposed to it because US and Iran are rivals. US was targeting Iran's nuclear program, nuclear weapons program. US had placed sanctions against Iran, and India was expected by US to follow the sanctions. The US put a lot of pressure on India to cancel the IPI project, and India eventually dropped it. In return, US offered an alternative for India, that is the TAPI pipeline. Plus, US believed it will help Afghanistan because such projects will boost the economy, right? So this project was started, and now it remains partially completed. Only a part of the project has been completed. From Turkmenistan to Afghanistan, the pipeline has been built, but the rest has not been taken up. Now there's no guarantee what will happen. Since Taliban has taken over, we don't know the fate of the project. It's uncertain. In fact, India always had concerns about the project. We always had our concerns. First of all, we were worried about how Pakistan would behave. Because since the pipeline is passing through Pakistani territory, there's every possibility Pakistan might cut off the pipeline. When tensions increase between India and Pakistan, we always have a fear that Pakistan might cut off this pipeline. So it is vulnerable for India-Pakistan tensions. Or maybe terror groups in Pakistan and Afghanistan could attack the pipeline. It's passing through the terror hubs. It's passing through Balochistan. It's passing through Kandahar. This is the hub of all the terrorist outfits. The Baloch rebel groups, Taliban, and various other groups are operating here. Any of them might target the pipeline, destroy it, thereby threatening the project. So we always had these concerns, but still we agreed to it because of our relations with US. Is that clear? We had these concerns with IPA project as well. Obviously, when this pipeline would pass through Pakistan, but this was underwater. It would pass through international waters, not through Pakistani territory, right? So we were okay with IPA project, we were pursuing it, but after US brought pressure on India, after US targeted Iran's nuclear program with sanctions, India was forced to give up the IPA project. All right? But this project still has the potential. Even today, if things stabilize in Afghanistan, if we work out our ties with Taliban, it's possible to revive this, complete the project, and it could bring these countries closer. It has the potential to allow India to work with Pakistan and Afghanistan. That is why TAPI pipeline is another important initiative. Next, the Ashgabat Agreement. Ashgabat Agreement is another multimodal transport corridor. Okay, it was proposed in 2011. It came into force in 2016. Proposed in 2011, came into force in 2016. This project plans to connect few Central Asian countries with the Persian Gulf. See, both regions are rich in resources. Persian Gulf is blessed with oil and gas. Central Asia is blessed with variety of resources, including hydrocarbons. So some Central Asian countries are planning to connect with Persian Gulf. Because don't forget, Central Asia is landlocked. It's surrounded by land. It does not have access to sea. So Central Asian countries are planning to connect with Persian Gulf because they will get sea access. This would boost trade between these countries. That is why this project was proposed. So this group includes Kazakhstan, the major Central Asian power, along with Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. These are the Central Asian countries that are part of the Ashgabat Agreement. Initially, Kazakhstan wasn't there. When the plan was proposed, it was only led by Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Later, Kazakhstan joined the initiative. It includes Iran and Oman from the Persian Gulf. So the plan is to connect the Central Asian countries with the Persian Gulf countries. Qatar was also part of it, but later quit before it came into force. When the idea was proposed in 2011, Qatar was also interested. It was part of the Ashgabat Agreement. But before it came into force, it had differences with Iran and others. Because of the geopolitical tensions here, Qatar quit Ashgabat Agreement. So Qatar is not part of it anymore. All right? It was never part of it when it came into force. It was only part of the proposal. But in 2016, a new member was added, that is Pakistan. Pakistan joined the agreement as a key member in 2016. And 2 years later, India also was admitted. We had applied for membership, given the importance of this group, and India was given membership in 2018. So currently, these are the members of Ashgabat Agreement. The plan is to link India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan with Iran and Oman to create transport links connecting all these countries through road, rail projects, and maritime links. Now, obviously, you can see that it has the potential to be connected with Afghanistan. We can link it up with Afghanistan, and it gives us an opportunity to work with Pakistan more importantly. Even now, there's no progress in the project. It's still in the initial stages. But if executed, it has great potential to bring growth to the whole region, to stabilize Afghanistan, and to build better ties between India and Pakistan. All right. So these are some projects you can suggest to show how India can improve its ties with Pakistan and Afghanistan. Of course, between India and Pakistan. India and Pakistan. All right. So these are some projects you can suggest to show how India can improve its ties with Pakistan and Afghanistan. Of course, there's one important point that I want to mention before I close the session for today. I want to mention the Chabahar Port project. We will study this in more detail later. But however, I want to talk about this project and let me show you a suitable map for that. Okay, let's use this map itself. The other important project which is relevant here is the Chabahar Port, which India has developed in Iran. It's a vital link for India to connect with Afghanistan and Central Asia. Now, see, if you observe the map here, if you look at this map, you can see that India does not have direct connectivity with Central Asia and Afghanistan. This has always been a weakness for India. See, we had very good relations with Afghan government. Afghan government had even allocated resources to India. We had won a mining license to mine iron ore in Afghanistan. Central Asian countries are very close to India. Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. All the 5 countries are very close to India. They are blessed with resources. They're ready to share resources with India. Problem is connectivity. We don't have direct connectivity. Because as I explained in the last class, we were supposed to have a border with Afghanistan near Wakhan corridor. Right? From Gilgit-Baltistan to Afghanistan, there was supposed to be a border. But this area has been captured by Pakistan from 1947. So we don't have direct link with Afghanistan, and hence lack of connectivity is the biggest hurdle for our ties with Afghanistan and Central Asia. So we started planning an alternate route. Because see, Pakistan would never give us the access. Pakistan would never give transit access to India. We have tried before. Even if it gives, it has given in some instances. If it gives transit access, it's not guaranteed, it's not reliable. Right? Pakistan might break it off any time when tensions are existing between India and Pakistan. So we can't rely on Pakistan to connect with Afghanistan and Central Asia. It's not a reliable, viable route. So that is why we planned an ambitious project many years ago, almost 2 decades ago, and we built a vital link with Iran, which has been a strategic partner for India. From late 1990s, India-Iran became very close. Remember I told you, we worked together to counter Taliban. We sponsored the Northern Alliance together. Since then, India-Iran became strategic partners and close defense partners as well, and we invested in the Chabahar port located over here. It's right next to the Hormuz Strait, which is a choke point. It's located near the Gulf of Oman, a vital port of Iran, and this was developed by India. Even today, an Indian company is operating the terminal. All right. Our plan was to link the port with Zahedan that you are seeing here in the map with a railway line. We were planning to build a railway link with Iran to connect the Chabahar port with Zahedan. It's a border town of Iran on the Afghan border. From here, we can connect with Zaranj, which is the border town in Afghanistan, from where we have already built a road connecting with Delaram, which further links with Kabul. As mentioned earlier, India has built this road. The Zaranj-Delaram highway in Afghanistan has already been built, completed by India. So our ambition was to use Chabahar port, build the Chabahar railway line, and connect with Zaranj-Delaram highway so we can have direct connectivity with Afghanistan. And the ambitious plan was to further extend this to connect with Central Asia. Central Asian countries were very excited because it would give them access to the Indian Ocean. Landlocked Central Asia would have access to Arabian Sea through the Chabahar port. This was a very ambitious project. We built, executed this as well. In 2017, a trilateral agreement was also signed. A trilateral agreement was signed between India, Iran, and Afghanistan to operationalize the trade route. We even operationalized it. From India, goods were sent to Afghanistan via Chabahar port. From Afghanistan, goods were brought to India via Chabahar port. This was the success for India. It was a tremendous success, a tremendous achievement because Chabahar port is a strategic project. Linking with the railway line and the Zaranj-Delaram road has been a top priority for India for many, many years. But unfortunately, all of this has been derailed since 2018 because of American pressure on India. Due to the American pressure on India, India was forced to follow the American sanctions against Iran, and we have cut off oil trade with Iran. Chabahar port was exempted from the sanctions. Chabahar port is not covered under the sanctions. That's why an Indian company still operates the Chabahar port. Even though Chabahar port was exempted, India cut off oil trade from Iran, and Iran was extremely angry with India. See, until then, at one point, Iran was the second biggest supplier of oil to India. Because of American pressure, right? It's very rare we fall under the pressure of another country. We don't follow unilateral sanctions, as we have discussed in previous classes. But this was a different context. The Trump administration brought a lot of pressure on the Modi government, forced India to follow the sanctions and cut off ties with Iran. So as India cut off oil trade, Iran was angry and retaliated against India, and Iran has cancelled the Chabahar railway project with India. Iran has dropped India out of the Chabahar railway project, without which the link is not complete. Indian companies still operate Chabahar port, but that is not enough. Our ties have been compromised. India-Iran relations are very poor right now. In the last 4-5 years, we've had very bad relations, and it has dropped India from the Chabahar railway project. Is that clear? Iran is planning to build this project on its own, most likely with Chinese funding, Chinese assistance. So this is a setback for India. It's a setback we have suffered. So we have to find a way to work with Iran. We need to look at our interests. We need to get out of American pressure, stop following the sanctions maybe, and rebuild our ties with Iran because Iran is critical. Later, when we come to West Asia chapter, we will discuss India-Iran relations in slight detail. We'll bring up these points again. For now, just understand Chabahar port project is vital for us. It could help us connect with Afghanistan and Central Asia. It could boost growth in the whole region. Possibly we can connect with Afghanistan and Pakistan together, thus improving our ties with these countries. All right. So essentially, I was trying to highlight what projects exist, what opportunities exist here to improve India's relations with Afghanistan and Pakistan. All right. So I hope you've got the complete picture. With this, I bring my discussion to an end. It's a very big topic, like I told you. It requires this attention, and we've thoroughly covered everything that is needed for the exam. Now, whatever questions you have, let me take a look, and we'll stop here for today. Tomorrow, we'll continue with the next module, the next chapter, and we'll start talking about India's relations with China. This is